Chapter 939. Just now, he had spoken in an extremely arrogant tone, directly introducing his name and background in a lofty and arrogant manner. His goal was naturally to take the free and natural physique down a notch. This was a tactic to subdue the enemy without a fight. As long as the other party showed the slightest hint of surprise, Zhang Qingfeng would disturb him mentally. He had never imagined that the other party had really not heard of his name at all. He even thought that he was doing rather badly, and even consoled him in a condescending and pitiful manner. This unexpected turn of events made Zhang Qingfeng feel as if he had punched empty air. Could it be that he, the great young master of the Zhan family, was also going to be protected by someone? Zhang Qingfeng practically wanted to tear this free and natural physique youth into pieces on the spot. The other party had a look of innocence on his face, but this was the most vicious attack against someone like Zhang Qingfeng, who was extremely arrogant and prideful. Miao Xiaomiao almost burst out laughing, but she forcefully held it in. She could tell that if this Mo Junyi didn't manage to beat every single person here into a pulp, he would definitely not leave. Audacious! Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to Big Brother Zhan like this? That green-robed youth took a step forward and pointed his finger at him. What did I say? I find this Brother Zhan very pleasing to the eye. Why don't I promise to protect him? And I wonder who this young master is? Young Master Jun looked at him with interest and suddenly said enviously, "Wow. Brother's clothes are really beautiful. It's so green, so nice to look at. Young Master, when you stand out, it's as if I've suddenly seen the bamboos in the mountains. The air is really fresh." Jun Moxie said regretfully, "The only pity is, although this young master is dressed entirely in green, there's still some imperfection." He looked left, right, up and down, sizing up the youth. "What's the flaw?" the green-robed youth asked angrily. "The only flaw is that, it's a pity that your hair is black. AI, if you could also wear a hat of the same color, it would naturally have the effect of adding the finishing touch. It would definitely be able to shake the entire misty illusory manner in a single night and become an immortal legend. You can think about it. You can do it." The green-clothed youth instantly understood the meaning behind the words of the person in front of him. His whole body trembled, and he was so angry that he wanted to step forward and strangle this bastard to death. Wearing a hat of this color? It was green. You're the one who's being cuckolded. Your whole family is a cuckold. Damn it. Do you think I can't tell? I believe everyone knows that I have the free and natural physique. However, this young Master Mo's following words caused the crowd's lungs to explode. "I also understand, brother is the legend in your hearts." He swung his sleeves proudly in a pretentious manner, shaking his head and turning his neck in a circle. Then he said proudly, "Although brother is not in the pugilistic world, but the pugilistic world is filled with legends of brother. The burden of fame, brother is actually very low profile, really very low profile." Everyone had the urge to vomit blood at the same time. Looking at the smug look on this fellow's face, as if he didn't know how much he weighed, complacent and shameless, it seemed that if it wasn't for the thing hanging down from his crotch, this fellow might have already flown up into the sky and soared into the sky. In that moment, everyone was panting heavily. All of them wanted to rush forward and press this shameless fellow to the ground, fucking him, then fucking him again, and then fucking him for 100 years. This fellow was really too shameless. Young Master Mo is right. The current you is indeed the legend of the Misty Mansion. The only legend. Zhang Qingfeng sucked in a deep breath and said, "However, all of us have a common trait, and that is that we are very pragmatic. We don't believe in any legends. Naturally, if there's any legend who thinks that he is a legend and wants to stand above us without any achievements, then, no matter what kind of godly abilities this legend has, we will have a taste of it. Only when we are convinced can he truly become a legend, an immortal legend, and naturally become the #1 person of the younger generation in the Misty Mansion." Zhang Qingfeng's tone was heavy and oppressive. Lengleng said slowly, "Young Master Mo, I believe that you will understand and agree with my words, right?" "Agree. Of course I agree. You are too right." This free and natural physique prodigy nodded with a face full of smiles. Then he scratched his head. But young Master Jean said something about a legend. That legend. What is going on? What does it mean exactly? I'm very sorry, I'm actually not very literate, although I'm confident that I'm also very talented and knowledgeable, but, young Master Jean, were you saying a tongue twister or a rhyme? It sounded very smooth, but it was a little roundabout, and I didn't quite understand it. Why don't you repeat it again? Meow Xiao Meow seemed like she really couldn't take it anymore and finally burst out laughing. This guy was fooling everyone, but his expression was so real, so perfect. Genius of the best actor, if there were such things in this world. You didn't understand? What a good, talented and knowledgeable. Let me explain it to you. What my big brother meant was that in the Misty Mansion, there's a trashy character who's like an idiot. He's an idiot in his bones, and it's just that he had some dogsh asterisk T luck. The heavens gave him a good body, and he actually wants to use this dogsh asterisk T luck to stand above us. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, and he's so arrogant. We naturally have to teach him a good lesson. Zhang Yushu came over and said in an extremely dangerous tone, "Fuck? Who is that person? A trash who relied on his body to climb up, and he's actually so daring." This Emo Junyi had a face full of righteous indignation as he rubbed his palms together and even spat into his own fist. He said with a murderous aura, "Beat that idiot to death. He actually dares to look down on my brother Jean. This is simply intolerable." As he spoke, he took 2 steps forward and came before Zhang Qingfeng. He patted Zhang Qingfeng's shoulder sympathetically and sighed. "Brother Jean, I understand, I finally understand your situation now. It's really tragic, Even an idiot looks down on you. It can be seen what level you've reached, As he spoke, this great young master Mo patted his own chest, causing a pa-poch sound to ring out. His heroic spirit reached the clouds as he said, "But it doesn't matter. Those are all in the past. I believe that that kind of situation will never happen again. Because I'm here. I, Mo Junyi, am here. I've arrived with the legendary attitude of a king. From now on, you're under my protection. I guarantee that you'll have a good life, and even a large amount of pocket money." He stomped his foot and gritted his teeth as if he had made up his mind. If those idiots still dare to look down on you in the future, don't stand on ceremony, Big Brother is here. Big Brother is very good at teaching idiots. As he spoke till here, Zhang Qingfeng's face had already turned green. But Jun Imosia was not done playing around. He patted Zhang Qingfeng's shoulder and sighed. "Today, in order to curry favor with me, you actually held such a grand banquet and even tore down your house? Although Big Brother knows that you're beating your own face until it's swollen to act like a fatty, I'm still touched by you. Don't worry if I don't stand up for you, wouldn't I be too heartless? What? This idiotic genius actually wants to open a banquet here and even wants to take the #1 young master of the Misty Mansion as his lackey." Everyone was speechless. This fellow can't be a brainless idiot, right? Zhang Qingfeng's eyes were also starting to glaze over. 3 black lines appeared on his forehead, and his eyes were getting more and more malevolent. He had always prided himself on being a gentleman and paid great attention to his image. But right now, he felt that he could no longer endure it. He had never been humiliated like this before. Even an idiot is looking down on you. It can be seen how miserable you are. Following this, no matter how they insulted him verbally, this prodigy of the free and natural physique was truly worthy of the word prodigy. With just a casual sentence, he directly changed the topic to Zhang Qingfeng. Everyone was originally scolding him, but in the end, it was as if everyone was racking their brains to think of vicious words to attack Zhang Qingfeng. This fellow was truly shameless. No wonder he was the only prodigy in the past 10,000 years. After an unknown amount of time, everyone finally confirmed that it was impossible to deal with this legendary free and natural physique prodigy with just words alone. Although this fellow looked like a fool, it didn't seem to be true. This fellow was simply pretending to be a fool. From the beginning, he had been pretending to be a fool. The current situation was very delicate. It was as if he had something to say, and I had something to say. If you scold me, I'll scold you. If you scold me vaguely, I won't use any vulgar words. If you fight me directly, I'll also throw a tantrum. Jun Dashao was having the time of his life. Mo Junyi, put away your pretentious tricks. This young master no longer has the interest and time to talk nonsense with you. Zhan Yu Shu panted heavily as he sat down and took in a deep breath of fresh air. Looking at his big brother's expression, he regained his composure. You are the legendary possessor of the free and natural physique. The moment you came to the Misty Mansion, you received the adoration of all the seniors. All the seniors are very fond of you. This is your advantage and we don't have it. We admit this and there's no way to deny it. This is your innate advantage. Although we are envious and jealous, there's nothing we can do about it. We can only say that you're lucky. Chapter 940. We're not convinced. The entire Misty Mansion should not revolve around you alone. Even if you have the legendary free and natural physique, it's not enough. Zhan Yushu's speech was clear, his expression calm, and his analysis of the pros and cons was spot on. There was no trace of his previous impatience. It was clear that his earlier agitated scolding was all an act. Not only did he clearly point out the crux of the conflict between everyone and Jun Moxie, he even used a very subtle method to slowly stir up everyone's emotions. He wanted to stir up the anger and resentment in the hearts of these young masters to the greatest extent, then gather all their forces and rise up together. If it was just one person or one family, it might not be enough to shake the position of the free and natural physique possessor. But almost all the younger generation of the Misty Mansion's major powers were gathered here. Could it be that the upper echelons of the Misty Mansion would offend all the future pillars for a single person? Among us, there are those who cultivate Xian Qi at godly speeds. There are those who are resourceful and farsighted, devising strategies to determine victory from 1,000 miles away. There are those who are skilled in the art of music, unparalleled in the world. There are those who are skilled in calculation, unparalleled in the art of calculation. There are those who are skilled in chess, never losing a single game of chess. There are those who are outstanding in the art of literature, composing poems in 3 steps, and writing a chapter. Even if they have 1,000 words to say, they can still be relied on. There are those who are skilled in painting, with a brush in hand, beautiful mountains and clear waters. There are those who are skilled in management, those who are skilled in battle. The more Zhan Yushu spoke, the faster he spoke, and the more agitated he became. The hall suddenly fell into an extreme silence, and only his voice could be heard. Everyone was staring at him with glowing eyes. Everyone's faces were glowing, and their breathing quickened. Finally, Zhan Yushu roared. There are so many talents here. Which one of them is not a heaven-defying genius? Which one of them isn't an outstanding talent? Which one of them isn't conscientious and diligent, hoping to receive the favor of their ancestors, so that they can get what they've been looking forward to for so long, but in the eyes of the real big shots, it's not worth a glance? Why is it that the moment you come, without any achievements, you can obtain all these things that we've been looking forward to for so long so easily? What's more, those things will naturally be delivered to you. You're just going to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor without putting in any effort? Why? Everyone, tell me. Are you convinced? Are you all willing? Zhan Yushu suddenly turned to face everyone and asked loudly, We can't accept this. We can't accept this. They were all saying the same thing. His voice was loud and clear, reverberating for miles. Right now, Zhan Yushu's face was no longer as calm as before. His voice was hoarse and his eyes were bloodshot. However, Jun Moxie could see it very clearly. This guy was purely pretending. These people that he spoke of might exist, but the benefits that they were after were definitely not what Zhan Yushu had described as positions and benefits that were not worth a second glance in the eyes of those truly powerful people. With their status and identity, why would they be after some small benefits? But Zhan Yushu's impassioned speech was able to incite the fury of these people to the greatest extent. Let these people, who originally only had a little bit of resentment in their hearts, slowly expand and take form. From a 30% unwillingness to accept this, to 100% hatred. Through this speech, he had completely pushed himself to the opposite side of these people, turning himself into the target of public criticism. Even if he was the possessor of the free and natural physique, if he was really ostracized by all of them, he would probably only be able to silently cultivate in the days to come. Become a lone ranger. Zhang Yushu's words and schemes could be said to be ingenious and brilliant, but his actions were destined to fail. Because he had missed out on something very important. All of his plans were based on a single premise. It was based on the premise that this free and natural physique Mo Junyi in front of him was truly just an ordinary person. But Jun Moxie did not care about them at all. With Jun Dushao's cultivation, he only needed to raise his hand to annihilate all of these talented youths and future pillars. Why would he care about them? The ants were roaring at the dinosaurs, challenging them. Would the dinosaurs accept the challenge? Would they be afraid? Besides, once he reached his goal of obtaining the 7-colored holy fruits, he would naturally retreat immediately and leave the Misty Mansion. Why would he stay here for a long time? To fight for whatever so-called resources. This was truly the greatest absurdity in the world. After we go out, this brother will remove his disguise. I'm still Jun Moxie, evil monarch. As for you little fellows who are fighting for a woman's favor, do whatever you want. This young master really has no interest in dealing with you. If not for my own ultimate goal, why would this old master be interested in playing with you here? Who do you think you are? Jun Moxie was still smiling faintly, his expression unchanged. He stared fixedly at the group of youths around him. These youths' eyes were all red from the agitation, and some of them were even trembling slightly. Clearly, they were extremely agitated, and their gazes towards Jun Moxie seemed like they were about to spit fire. This was especially so for the few people who seemed to be the most agitated. Their robes were not very bright, and one or two of them were clearly very clean. Their robes were even a little shabby. It was obvious that their family background was not very good. With a single look, Jun Moxie could tell that the ones who were going to compete with him were probably these poor disciples. Only they were the ones who had truly given up everything in exchange for the chance to gain the recognition of the Misty Mansion. That was why they were so furious that the free and natural physique possessor had snatched away the resources that originally belonged to them. So indignant, Jun Moxie could not help but feel some pity in his heart. These bunch of fools. Did they really think that as long as I wasn't around, they would be able to obtain what they wanted? One must know that this world had always been unfair. Reality was never a fairy tale. Whoever fantasized about seeking justice in this world would be the most pitiful person. Actually, the ones who were the most unfair to them were the ones who were watching the show with a face full of indignation. When they needed it, they had to be their tools. But when they no longer needed it, what did they count for? Their ancestors and fathers had built up their foundations, and they had everything they had now. If Mo Junyi relied on his innate talent to reap without sowing, then what right did these rich second generations have to be superior to him? Didn't they still have to rely on Zhu Meng's care? Wasn't that also reaping without sowing? Who was more shameless than the other? If it was said that the poor disciples hated Mo Junyi out of jealousy, there was no one who hated the rich second generations around them. Who was really ignorant? A scholar from a poor family could be a county magistrate or a small official. But as long as he was not a founding hero, how many scholars from a poor family could become high-ranking officials or loyal officials in the court? Foundation, that was the enormous accumulation of life after life. If a person without a background worked hard for his whole life, he might be able to climb to the position of a county magistrate. If his son worked hard for his whole life, he might be able to reach the position of a prefectural official with the help of his father's connections. If his grandson also worked hard, he might be able to reach the position of an inspector with the help of his grandfather and father's connections. And this was only under the most auspicious and smooth circumstances. He could only reach this step. If he had a great-grandson, he would have the opportunity to enter the court and become one of the few people in the world. But at that time, would he still be a so-called poor disciple? Or would he no longer be a poor disciple from the moment he became a county magistrate's grandfather? Although this was not a pure hereditary system, it was a more realistic hereditary system. No matter what kind of social system it was, This phenomenon could never be changed. The father was a hero, and the son was a good man. This was the absolute truth. But there must be a prerequisite. If you want your son to become a good man in the future, then you must first become a hero yourself. So this bunch of poor disciples gathered here, instigated by Zhan Yushu and the rest to deal with him, was just their wishful thinking. After this matter was over, if the free and natural physique was really suppressed as they wished, who would still remember that they had once fought against these free and natural physique people here? To Zhan Yushu and the rest, what a waste of brain cells. If they were unhappy, or if they needed someone to take responsibility for the premature death of the free and natural physique, then wouldn't these people be the best scapegoats? Even if there was no need for scapegoats, even if they were just giving these people something out of a moment of happiness, that was the real benefits and duties that were not worth a second glance in the eyes of the big shots. It was like a person eating in a restaurant throwing a bone that he didn't want to eat to a stray dog by the roadside. That was all. Why would Mo Junyi, who had the free and natural physique and was the darling of the entire Misty Mansion, care about something like that? That was something even trashier than trasha. But even if it was a bone like that, to these people, it was still a rare opportunity. So dealing with him was just because Zhan Yushu and the rest were unhappy with him. But it still concerned the future of these people. So although they had no enmity with him, they still fought against the darling of the Misty Mansion without any hesitation. And these young masters who grew up in rich and powerful families had long mastered the art of trickery. From a young age, they had already learned how to make others swear loyalty to them and work for them, how to use others as a tool, how to use the least amount of effort to obtain the most benefits. They could even hide behind the scenes, treating everything as a game in the palm of their hands, letting others fight for it until their heads bled and their lives were in danger. They were just sitting on the fishing platform. Even if the flames rose to the skies, it wouldn't burn them at all. To Jun Moxie sighed in his heart. Because of the lamentable nature of these people, and because of the helplessness of this world. Chapter 941. And Miao Xiao Miao, who was standing quietly a distance away, looked at the situation before her. It was developing in a direction that was not favorable to Mo Junyi. Everything seemed to be under the control of the two brothers of the Zhan family. A hint of worry finally appeared in her eyes. She understood that today's matter was no longer just a simple humiliation. What they really wanted was to leave a permanent mark of failure in the heart of this free and natural physique prodigy. Their only goal was to completely destroy this free and natural physique prodigy. Even if they couldn't destroy him, they wanted to completely destroy any chance of him entering the core of the Misty Mansion now or in the future. So many people were making things difficult for him at the same time. Among them, there were many talented people. Even if he was a great talent, even if he was a perverted prodigy, how could he possibly win? Not to mention anything else, his Xian Qi cultivation was the weakest amongst everyone present. Even if he didn't count Xian Qi, even the 9 Nether first young master from 10,000 years ago would not be able to defeat all these people in their area of expertise. Second young master Zhan, you've said so much, but I still don't understand. You're even better at beating around the bush than your elder brother. Just tell me, what do you want? Jun Moxie was finally getting impatient. Great prodigy Mo, I don't care if you're pretending to be dumb or really dumb. I'll tell you directly. Our intention is very simple. I'm here to seek justice from you, the heavens favored one. Zhan Yushu shouted righteously. We will definitely not allow you, who appeared out of nowhere, to plunder everything that originally belonged to us. We want to snatch it back. Snatch back our rights. Snatch back what we've been pursuing all our lives. I understand now. You guys are jealous that the seniors of the Misty Mansion think highly of me. Why didn't you just say so earlier? What's the point of going through so much trouble? Then how do you intend to snatch it back? Jun Mo Xie laughed instead, a look of interest in his eyes. Looking at the agitated Zhan Yushu, he thought to himself, this fellow really knows how to act. At this time, he's probably already immersed in his role. He's also an actor. Looking at Zhan Qingfeng, who was sitting there with a gloomy face, he thought to himself, No wonder the Jean family could have a place in the misty illusory manor. As expected, they have successors. Just the two brothers before him, Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu, both of them are not easy to deal with. The two brothers' intelligence, wisdom, scheming, and shrewdness were all first-rate. It was a pity that they didn't put this material to good use. Instead, they were obsessed with scheming and fighting for power. If the Misty Mansion were to collapse in the future, then the cause would be the Zhang family. These two brothers were actually ambitious and ruthless people. When two tigers coexisted, how could they work together? Looking at the 5 or 6 youths sitting around him, although they were all filled with anger on the surface, their eyes were calm and tranquil. These young masters of the aristocratic families were indeed not simple at all. Great prodigy Mo is a straightforward person. Since you're so straightforward, we won't make things difficult for you. You've just arrived, and your Xian Qi cultivation is not high. We naturally won't compete with you in martial arts, because that would be purely bullying you and would be unfair. We're even more disdainful of doing such tasteless things. Even if we want you to lose, we want you to lose wholeheartedly. Zhang Yushu said with a righteous and reasonable face. But other than Xian Qi, as long as you work hard in other areas, you will definitely have considerable achievements. Look at these people here. No matter which one of them is older than you by a few years. They've all developed to a certain level in their various fields. Some of them have even reached the level of a grandmaster in a certain field. Their achievements can be said to be remarkable. As he spoke up to here, a few people's eyes shone with pride and arrogance. But all of their faces were calm, as if they weren't talking about them. They were very reserved. Their talents are naturally far from your free and natural physique, but they can still have their current achievements. And you have the unparalleled free and natural physique. I believe there's no reason why you can't do the same. But you've easily snatched away the resources that they've worked hard for their entire lives. So we want to compete with you. This kind of feeling is really too aggrieving. Jun Moxie cursed in his heart. Fuck. If this daddy wasn't a transmigrator, wouldn't I be toyed to death by you? Although all of them had achieved remarkable achievements in their respective fields, it was all because of their focus. 10 to 20 years of focus on one thing, as long as one wasn't as stupid as a pig, there would definitely be some results, but you want me to compete with so many people at the same time in something that everyone is proficient in? Isn't that a joke? If this isn't bullying, then what is bullying? Other than Jun Moxie himself, a transmigrator with 5,000 years of civilization, no one in history would be able to do this. Even if the 9 Nether First Young Master, a true free and natural physique holder, came back to life, facing so many challenges, he would also be helpless. Of course, if the 9 Nether First Young Master really came back to life, the most likely scenario would be to knock everyone down with a single slap. Not convinced? Then kill them all with a single slap. The Zhang family really had it all planned out. Miao Xiao Miao almost cursed out loud. You better not agree, Once you agree, you'll be consigned to eternal damnation, When Zhang Yushu said this, Zhang Qingfeng coughed lightly, and Zhang Yushu immediately changed them to us. This change was very small, and most people didn't notice it. But Miao Xiao Miao's eyes flickered, and Jun Moxie even had a faint smile on his lips. Miao Xiao Miao looked at the two brothers warily, the wariness in her heart growing thicker. Just the tacit understanding between these two brothers was already something that could not be underestimated. As the saying goes, a mountain cannot contain 2 tigers, and a country cannot contain 2 rulers. Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu, these two brothers, were both formidable and ambitious, but they were able to work together flawlessly. Clearly, the relationship between these two was very good. This matter looked simple, and it was reasonable for brothers to be close. But in reality, it was very rare. Especially in a wealthy family, such a thing happening was simply unimaginable. The fights between the descendants of the aristocratic families were not inferior to the royal family. Killing one's own brother and killing one's own father was not a rare thing. Just this point alone made the Zhang family a level higher than the other aristocratic families. I must definitely tell grandfather about this when I return. But right now, Jun Emosia was thinking about something else. So it turns out that these two brothers have different goals in the misty, illusory manner. Only in this way could there be no conflict. To talk about brotherly love in such a large family was simply a fantasy. Then, since their goals were different, then their goals were very clear. One of them should be interested in the authority of the Misty Mansion, and the other should be interested in the main Jean family. This was the only possibility that June Moxie could think of. In fact, June Moxie was 100% sure that his guess was absolutely correct. The Jean family indeed had huge ambitions. It was no wonder that they had to use the quota for the elixir garden in this seemingly boring bet, but if Zhan Qingfeng wanted to enter the spiritual herbal gardens to fight for the position of garden lord, then Zhan Yushu would have to take on the responsibility of inheriting the entire Zhan family. But if that was the case, then what about the position of the manor lord with the highest authority in the Misty Mansion? Could it be that the Zhan family had no ambitions for this position at all? Regarding this, June Moxie would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. Then the matter was very simple. But this simple fact was something that even a wily old fox like June Emosie would jump in fright when he thought about it. Could it be that the Zhan family had another peerless genius hidden within? Even more intelligent and resourceful than Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu. Able to completely subdue these two brothers of the same clan who were the cream of the crop in terms of intelligence and scheming. Perhaps this was the only way to explain this incomprehensible phenomenon. That was why Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu had to settle for the next best thing. The Zhan family was really awesome. June Moxie's mind raced, and he instantly understood all of this. When he looked at Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu again, there was a hint of caution in his eyes. Carefully traversing the world. Otherwise, even an unparalleled hero would fail miserably in an easy task. Although June Moxie had always been arrogant on the surface and even looked down on the world from the corner of his eyes, when it came to the meticulousness in his heart, no one could compare to him, and in this period of time, Zhan Yushu had also listed out the conditions of the competition. After you compete with us once, regardless of whether you win or lose, we will all admire you as a man and acknowledge the position you have in the Misty Mansion. Acknowledge the position? Who are you lying to? Do you even believe these words of yours? June Moxie was filled with disdain in his heart. No wonder your Zhan family would be so interested in me, a free and natural physique possessor, to the point of risking everything to scheme against Mo Junyi. So it's because you're afraid that great prodigy Mo will snatch away what you want or obstruct your plans. After all, a free and natural physique possessor was like a ticking time bomb. No one knew when he would suddenly explode and become an existence that could threaten anyone. Right now, June Moxie had finally found out the motive behind the Zhan family's provocation. June Dashao had even deduced that other than the main motive, the Zhan family was also planning to make use of this provocation to pick out potential investors from the commoner disciples and pull them into the Zhan family's camp. To become the private strength of the Zhan family. After this matter, these people would have completely offended the free and natural physique prodigy, Mo Junyi, as well as the holy Emperor Chao Guofeng and the other upper echelons of the Misty Mansion. Coupled with the Zhan family's threats and promises, it would be a piece of cake for the Zhan family to recruit them. Chapter 942. It was a pity that such a meticulous plan was destined to fail. Because the Zhan family just had to meet this imposter, June Moxie. Moreover, this imposter also had an endless amount of energy. The brilliant plan that the Zhan family had painstakingly prepared was like an unstoppable torrent, but it suddenly crashed into the tallest pillar of heaven's mountains in the world, destined to be a tragedy. This was really like the old saying, man proposes, God disposes. June Moxie felt that the old ancestors' words were too fucking reasonable. The things in this world were really too fucking miraculous and ridiculous. Is it really just a single round of competition? That simple? June Moxie asked without batting an eyelid. Of course it's not that simple. Zhan Yushu revealed a smile that he thought was very bright. Actually, it's not a big deal. That is, since there's a competition, then there's naturally a bet. And this wager is what we truly want. Bet? You guys actually have conditions to compete with me? June Moxie asked. Of course there are conditions. If there are no benefits, wouldn't we have wasted so much manpower and resources for nothing? Without an equivalent bet, it would be letting down great prodigy Mo's legendary status. Zhang Yushu's face turned serious and he said slowly, the conditions are also very simple. No matter which category you are in, as long as you lose, you are not allowed to touch any resources in this field for the rest of your life. Whether it's your position or resources, etc. For example, if you lose in painting, you are not allowed to mention the words painting for the rest of your life. It's the same for other areas as well. Zhang Yushu smiled and said, other than that, you also have to promise to agree to 3 conditions. 3 conditions that you cannot refuse no matter what the request is, and no matter what the situation is. That includes anything. If you have no objections, we can immediately make a contract. On it, there will be our signatures and handprints, and we will swear on our ancestors' souls that we will never go back on our words. Zhang Yushu's face turned cold. Of course, if great prodigy Mo doesn't have the guts, feel free to leave and the competition will be over. However, I must solemnly reiterate that if this competition is successfully completed, we will not make things difficult for you regardless of the final outcome. But if you run away pathetically, I, Zhang Yushu, swear on the honor of the Zhan family that there will be no place for you, Mo Junyi, in the misty mansion. Even if you have the free and natural physique, the result would be the same. Zhang Yushu chuckled. At that time, you only had 2 paths. First, in the misty mansion, becoming a cripple or directly dying, turning into ashes. Second, you can return to the outside world to beg for food. Return to your beggar identity. You aren't a fool either. Even if you haven't seen our Zhan family strength, you should have heard of it. Think about what you should choose for yourself. Zhang Yushu, you're despicable. Miao Xiao Miao panicked. How could such a condition only ruin Mo Junyi? It was practically tying 3 shackles on Mo Junyi that could never be undone. Once this condition was set, once Mo Junyi lost, it was equivalent to becoming a slave of the Zhan family. You must not agree. You must not agree. These 2 brothers of the Zhan family were too sinister. June Moxie snickered in his heart. I'm not afraid of you raising conditions. I'm only afraid that you won't raise conditions. As expected, they've finally revealed their fox's tail. The Zhan family's schemes were truly deep and far-sighted. Not only did they have designs on the Miao family, Miao Xiao Miao, the spiritual herbal gardens, and the position of the manor lord of the Misty Mansion. They even had designs on the families of these youths here today, on these commoner disciples who were participating in today's competition, and they even had designs on Mo Junyi, the future #1 expert of the Misty Mansion. This was truly too awesome. As for those conditions, it was completely a smokescreen by the Zhan family. Because for a free and natural physique, the main goal was still the level of Xian Qi cultivation. What zither, chess, calligraphy, poetry, and songs? To him, it was completely meaningless. Even if he was allowed to participate, he would not have any interest. That was just a method to win the hearts of the people, but it was better than nothing. The real conditions were the 3 conditions that could not be rejected at any time and no matter what conditions were raised. This was where the real highlight of the show was. Furthermore, the Zhan family would definitely not raise these 3 conditions now. It was a long-term investment. When this free and natural physique cultivator's cultivation reached a certain level and showed the potential of a peerless expert, but had yet to truly reach the peak, then they would raise these conditions. If they raised it too early, they would be worried that their cultivation would not be sufficient, and they might not be able to unleash their full potential. If they raised it too late, they would already be a peerless expert who could completely disregard the existence of the Zhan family. At that time, even if there was a letter of blood, it would be useless. They could just kill the entire Zhan family to silence them. In this world where the bigger fist made the most sense, this kind of thing was too common. Only at that critical moment, which was neither too high nor too low, would it be the most suitable and easier to control. June Moxie put himself in the Zhan family's shoes and thought about it. He couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. If it was him, the first condition would be for this peerless expert with the free and natural physique to kill an important person in the Misty Mansion, causing chaos and even panic in the Misty Mansion. The second thing would be to kill the Manor Lord, and the third would probably be to join the Jean family. These three moves could be said to be closely linked with each other. First, killing an important person who was not on good terms with them would naturally mean that both parties would be on good terms. But because of this, the Jean family would have a hold on him. At the second step, they naturally had no choice but to do it. If they did the second step, there would be no turning back. Apart from joining the Jean family, there would be no other place for them in the entire Misty Mansion. After that, even if Mo Junyi became an invincible existence in the future, he would definitely not be able to turn against the Jean family. In this way, not only would the Jean family be able to obtain a future #1 expert in the world, they would also be able to firmly grasp the entire Misty Mansion in their hands and pass it down for generations to come. Despicable? These were just the stakes and conditions of the bet. The choice is in Brother Mo's hands. Brother Mo can choose to agree, but he can also choose not to agree. The right to decide is not in my hands. How am I despicable? There's no loss when there's a bet. Who knows, the great prodigy Mo might win. Didn't you hear Brother Mo say that he's a legend? Zhang Yushu smiled gently and said, "Little sister Xiao Miao, it's not important how you do things. What's important is, what's the result?" The so-called despicable means in the eyes of the world can also be done in an open and honorable manner. And some open and honorable means can often be used as a smokescreen for despicable purposes. As for the secret behind it, other than the person involved, no one else will be able to guess it. When he said this, Zhan Qingfeng coughed lightly again, clearly hinting to him not to say too much to Miao Xiao Miao. "Humph, do you think that I don't know your motive? Zhan Yushu, you're using such a method to deal with the free and natural physique that all the seniors in the Misty Mansion hold in high regard. Isn't your Zhan family afraid of incurring the wrath of the masses? At that time, can your Zhan family bear the wrath of all the seniors?" Miao Xiao Miao looked at Zhan Yushu. Her usually calm eyes were actually filled with a rare fury. Our Zhan family is wholeheartedly for the sake of the Misty Mansion. Even if we set up this bet, we will not do anything that goes against the heavens. This I can swear to the heavens. Besides, little sister Xiao Miao, this competition is only a bet between us juniors. Didn't you also participate in a similar bet earlier? Do you think that the stakes of the bet you participated in would be that much smaller? Zhan Yushu snorted and said with a smile that was not a smile. Miao Xiao Miao was exasperated. She was just about to speak when she saw Jun Moxie raise his head in deep thought. "Second young Master Zhan, I understand what you're saying. But this condition of yours, doesn't it seem a little too unfair? From the start to the end, only if I lose, you are allowed to raise conditions. Then why don't you say, if I win, what will happen? Could it be that only you are allowed to raise conditions if you win, and I have to work hard for nothing? The bet needs to be fair. If Brother Mo is able to win in the end, you are naturally allowed to raise conditions." Zhan Yushu's expression was clearly as if he was joking. Everyone at the side couldn't help but laugh out loud. This Mo Junyi is really too funny. Facing so many top-notch talents from all walks of life at the same time, he actually intends to win all of them? He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. "Of course I will raise conditions," Jun Moxie said seriously, "and I've already thought of the conditions. Since your conditions are so harsh, then my conditions cannot be so easily either. Don't you think so? Oh? What conditions do you have? You can state them." Zhan Yushu squeezed out a smile and asked unhappily. This country bumpkin really doesn't know his place. "Brother Mo, you must be careful. This is not the first time these two brothers of the Zhan family have gone back on their words." Miao Xiao Miao saw that he had the intention to agree and couldn't help but panic. She couldn't be bothered about being reserved and completely disregarding offending Zhan Yushu and Zhan Qingfeng. "Miao Xiao Miao." Zhan Qingfeng, who hadn't spoken for a long time, called out sternly, "What do you mean by that?" Chapter 943. To think that I've treated you like my own sister, and you're slandering me like this? Just based on a bet that hasn't even started, and you're saying that I'm going back on my words? Zhan Qingfeng's eyes were filled with pain as he said sorrowfully, "Little sister Xiao Miao, how can I, your brother, endure such words? Young Master Zhan, I'm no longer that little kid of the past." Miao Xiao Miao said lightly, "And you're no longer the big brother Zhan of the past. Saying all this now is after that incident, and I've witnessed your scheme with my own eyes. Do you think that I'll still believe you? Good. Good." Zhan Qingfeng sighed and did not say another word. "Miss Miao, please relax. Although I don't dare to boast that I'm well versed in everything, but I do know a thing or two about the arts of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Although I've only studied for less than 3 years, I feel that I'll be able to handle it. You don't have to worry about me. They've raised 3 conditions, and I'll also raise them later. Since you're so concerned about me, how about I share one condition with you after I win?" Jun Moxie's words caused everyone present to burst into laughter. This fellow really knows how to boast too much. He really doesn't know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is. I've seen arrogant people before, but this is the first time I've seen someone who's so arrogant. This fellow is even more arrogant than the legendary Jun Moxie and the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Then please tell us your conditions, Brother Mo. Who knows, maybe Brother Mo will really win. Zhan Yushu pursed his lips, suppressing the urge to laugh maniacally as the corners of his mouth twitched. "I heard earlier that Miss Miao had a bet with young Master Zhan. From the looks of it now, that bet has been cancelled. My conditions are somewhat similar to Miss Miao's, but also somewhat different." Jun Moxie said blankly, "The first condition is that I want the right to enter the spiritual herbal gardens, and I want the Zhan family to guarantee that I can enter. If it's just a verbal promise, you won't believe me, and I won't believe you either. I want both of you brothers to sign a blood oath together. On it, you have to swear in the name of your Zhan family's ancestors and descendants. No matter what means you use, as long as I win, you must ensure that I enter the spiritual herbal garden. Most importantly, you're not allowed to affect Miss Miao's quota, because this time, I'm going to accompany her. Apart from that, I also want everyone present to write a certificate of audience. If anyone doesn't keep his promise, all 8 generations of his ancestors will suffer in hell for all eternity. They will never be able to transcend reincarnation. In the future, they will have children. The men will be prostitutes, and the women will be endless." Jun Moxie chuckled and straightforwardly stated his first condition. Furthermore, it was such a vicious restriction. This condition of his looked simple, but the restrictions within it were even stricter than what Zhan Yushu had set for himself. Hearing such a cruel oath, everyone's face changed color. Not only did it implicate their ancestors, but it also involved their descendants. This was an oath that no one dared to make. An oath that no one dared to violate once it was made. At their level, they all knew that there were too many unexplainable things in the unseen world. There were too many existences that they couldn't see or think of. The theory of ghosts and spirits might not be completely groundless. It was not uncommon for oaths to come true. Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu looked at each other. They could see the conflict and worry in each other's eyes, as well as that uncontrollable rage. An oath that guarantees the rights of both parties? You don't dare to make it? Why are you so hesitant? Jun Moxie looked at the 2 brothers. But you were the ones who came to me first, wanting to compete with me. You did not allow me to retreat, and even raised so many harsh conditions. Why, now that I'm raising the conditions, you're all mute? Didn't you say that you want to bet on justice? Although the conditions are difficult, they are also valid reasons. This is naturally understandable, but isn't it a little too vicious for you to make an oath other than the conditions? Zhan Qingfeng furrowed his brows and said viciously, "Also, why do you want to enter the spiritual herbal gardens?" "Nothing much, I was just bored and couldn't think of any good conditions. How could I be as prepared and farsighted as you guys? Why, this young master heard that the place is not bad and wants to go into play. Or is it that your Zhan family can't do it?" Jun Moxie laughed coldly and said, "As for the oath, one speaks according to the type of person one speaks to. If it's a gentleman, why would there be a need for an oath? It's just a verbal agreement, and everyone can rest assured. He looked at Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu from the corner of his eyes. But the two of you? I don't trust you. I don't trust you at all. You even dare to act shamelessly against a lady like Miss Miao, let alone me. I'm only asking for a guarantee. The two brothers snorted at the same time. But the two of them were completely helpless against Mo Junye's questioning. The conditions that Zhang Yushu had raised earlier were all beneficial to the Zhang family. He had long cast aside everyone else. All the youths from the other families were looking at the two of them with gloating expressions in their eyes. They were waiting to see how the two of them would reply. As for those commoners, they had even less of a right to interrupt. The quota to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. Would these two brothers dare to agree? Everyone could see that they were deliberately making things difficult for Mo Junyi. Apart from those idiots who were provoked by the Zhan family, most of these young masters from the other families were just here to watch the show. Why would they be afraid of the matter blowing up? The bigger the matter, the better it would be. Although the free and natural physique's influence was weak now, his future was limitless. They did not really want to offend him. And the Zhan family's influence was also at its peak in the Misty Mansion. They also did not want to offend him. In fact, they could not afford to offend him. So even though these people appeared to be very angry on the surface, they still abided by one thing. They could put on an expression, and they could also put on a good front. But if they really offended great prodigy Mo, they would not say a single word. Because this great prodigy was a true prodigy. As long as they maintained a neutral stance, no matter how the situation developed, they would be able to curry favor with Mo Junyi or the Zhan family. Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu were indeed in a dilemma. The quota to enter the spiritual herbal gardens, even the manor lord of the Misty Mansion could not just give it to anyone. Not to mention their Zhan family. And if they really swore a blood oath here in front of so many people, with so many people as witnesses, they would definitely not be able to go back on their word. Then, if they lost, it would mean that the entire Zhan family's strength would have to be mobilized, including those chess pieces that had been hidden for hundreds of years. Only in this way could they fight for the right to enter the spiritual herbal gardens for Mo Junyi. And it was only a possibility. But the moment they mobilized all their strength, it would still not bring any benefits to the Zhan family. Apart from exposing their immense strength, they would not even gain a single cent. And they would not have any relationship with Mo Junyi. Because they were the ones who lost the bet, although Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu were both representatives of the younger generation of the family, and their statuses were extremely important, this matter concerned the future of the entire Zhan family. Even they would not dare to make such a promise in private. The promise this time was definitely different from the bet between Zhang Qingfeng and Miao Xiaomiao. There was no way they could go back on their word. Even if they did not consider Mo Junye's immense potential, there was still the Holy Emperor Chao Guofeng and the other 6 holy emperors behind him. Which one of them was easy to deal with? The two brothers could not help but curse this Mo Junyi in their hearts for being a troublemaker. To think that he would come up with such a painful condition. The situation was clearly in their favor, but with just a few words from this brat, it had turned into a situation where they could not back down, but this was the method they had used to coerce Mo Junyi earlier. Right now, the other party was using their own methods to counter them. It was like using their own spear to attack their own shield. This plan was even more brilliant. The affairs of the world were truly unpredictable. The Zhan family's goal was very clear. But the other party clearly did not care about the quota to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. It was only because the Zhan family needed it that I had to fight for it so that I could go in and have some fun. This reason that came up with so casually was truly enough to make one vomit blood. Furthermore, the Zhan family was fighting for it for him, and they had to fight for it. So even when Jun Moxie asked for the 3rd time, the two brothers still did not dare to agree. This matter was too serious. Whoever dared to agree would be an idiot. But if they did not agree, dragging it out was not a solution either. If they did not agree, the competition would not be able to proceed. Then the entire plan would be ruined, and all the Zhan family's plans would be for naught. And because of today's matter, they would completely offend Mo Junyi and all the people behind him. They would offend the future strongest expert in the Misty Mansion, and they would not be able to do anything about it. Just thinking about it was enough to make one's head hurt. But agreeing with such serious consequences, who would dare to agree? This was really making things difficult for him. Why? Why don't you swear? As long as you swear, the competition can begin anytime. The choice is in your hands. If you are willing to swear, I will naturally be at ease to compete. On the other hand, I have no interest in signing some blood oath with people who have no integrity. Why are you so hesitant? As long as you do not go against your oath, there will not be any problems. So what if your oath is a little more vicious? Don't tell me you have the intention to go against your word from the start? Jun Dashao asked coldly. Chapter 944. You're still trying to argue your way out of this? As long as you don't go against your oath, what's there to be afraid of? Also, are my conditions really that harsh? I've directly put the conditions on the table, but your conditions are 3 conditions that you can't refuse at any time. Everyone here is a discerning person. Let me ask you, whose conditions are harsher? What did your second brother say just now? Didn't he swear on the reputation of the Zhan family that if I avoid this battle, there will be no place for me, Mo Junyi, in the Misty Mansion? Speaking of tyranny, who is more tyrannical? Jun Moxie continued to pursue. I didn't mean it that way just now. I was afraid that Brother Mo wouldn't accept the challenge and made a slip of the tongue. The Zhan family has elders and brothers. What right does Zhan Yushu have to represent the Zhan family? I definitely didn't mean to threaten Brother Mo. However, today's battle no longer concerns the Zhan family. It concerns the future of the entire Misty Mansion. Even if Brother Mo wants to avoid this battle, it's all in vain. Why be a despicable person? Zhan Yushu was rather sharp, instantly changing the topic. Despicable person? Who is the despicable person here? I believe everyone here is very clear. I'll just reiterate one point. As long as you are willing to accept my conditions, the battle can begin immediately. I'll say it again, the decision lies in your hands. I also understand that the reason why you're hesitating is because you know that you don't have enough weight. At least you have some self-awareness. Jun Moxie laughed coldly. I said that the two of you are just small characters in the Zhan family that can't even be shown in public. You guys still refuse to admit it, and even kept on praising the Zhan family to me. Now, just a mere qualification to enter the spiritual herbal gardens, and the 2 young masters don't even dare to agree to it. To think that you were still bragging just now. I really wonder how many of the promises you've made before can actually be fulfilled. Right now, Jun Dashao was completely unforgiving. He looked at the 2 of them with an extremely disdainful gaze, as if he was looking at a pair of paupers who couldn't even pretend to be fatty even if their faces were swollen. Then what conditions do you 2 brothers still want from me? Are you worthy? Aren't you ashamed of raising conditions to a person with the free and natural physique who has never been seen in history? You want to take advantage of this genius? It was like a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. You've really misunderstood me. In an instant, there was a commotion. The Zhan brothers' faces were flushed red, but they were helpless and helpless. Now, it was obvious that they had made things difficult for the other party, and the other party had agreed. However, they didn't dare to agree to the conditions set by the other party, or perhaps they didn't have the qualifications to agree. Since they didn't have the qualifications, then what was it if they proposed a duel and added so many harsh conditions to the other party wasn't a joke? It was a living example of a toad lusting after the flesh of a swan. In the opposite restaurant, 2 old men were quietly sitting in the room opposite them. In the middle of the room, a sandalwood incense was slowly burning. Green smoke rose in spirals. Compared to the noise on the opposite side, there was only silence here. This little fellow with the free and natural physique is indeed not an ordinary person. I'm afraid Yu Shu and Qing Feng will definitely not be able to get any benefits from him. One of the old men closed his eyes and said softly, "These few years, the 2 brothers have indeed been too successful in their actions, and it's inevitable that they think too highly of themselves. This time, it's also a good chance for them to train themselves a little. The other old man sat cross-legged, not even lifting his eyelids as he said, "But this condition, from your point of view, what do you think? Do you agree or not?" The old man from before looked at the ordinary face of Mo Junyi. At this moment, the owner of this face was cursing at the two young talents of the Zhan family, saying all sorts of nasty things, causing the two of them to turn purple, but they couldn't do anything. Actually, there's no harm in agreeing to this condition. The old man still did not open his eyes. The reason why Yu Shu and Qing Feng don't dare to agree is because the implications are too great, and they don't have the authority to make the decision. That's why they don't dare to agree. You must know that something like authority can determine a person's boldness. But from another point of view, it doesn't matter even if we agree to this condition. Just like what this Mo Junyi said, as long as we win, it doesn't matter what oath we make. And that brat definitely has no hope of winning. The old man said lightly. So what if we make an oath now? After a while, when the outcome of the battle was clear, who would remember this matter? Even if someone remembers, they will only praise Yu Shu and Qing Feng for their courage. They even dared to agree to such a condition. This is actually beneficial to the two of them. But what if they lose? The old man from before asked worriedly. Anything is possible. It's impossible for them to lose. The cross-legged old man finally had some expression on his face. His lips curled into a sarcastic smile. Furthermore, even if Luong loses, it's just a slot to enter the spiritual herbal gardens. Our Zhan family might still be able to fight for it. What's the harm in letting him enter once? Even if he is lucky enough to obtain the affinity of the holy tree, then it's only the Miao family losing power. This is also a good thing for our Zhan family. Because of this, the Miao family will also be standing against that brat. Even if this brat goes against us in the future, but, for at least 300 to 500 years, he will not have overwhelming strength. If we discover that something is amiss, wouldn't it be a simple matter for our Zhan family to get rid of him? Right now, our biggest target is only the Misty Mansion, not the free and natural physique. We need to be clear about this. If we can't even do this, then what's the point of talking about doing something big? Yes, you are right. The old man from before looked about the same age as this person, but his attitude was extremely respectful. It was completely the attitude of a junior in front of an elder. But this free and natural physique is definitely not as simple as a cultivation genius. We need to strengthen our control over this person. After saying this, the old man closed his eyes. The old man by the side agreed after some thought. Then his lips moved slightly, sending a voice transmission to Zhan Qing Feng. But we agree to this condition. Zhan Qing Feng immediately put on an infuriated expression and stood up. I believe there are still 2 more conditions. Just state them all. Dragging the time will only make me look down on you. But he secretly heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. So the old ancestor is here today. Then, today's matter can be considered settled. But he also felt a little dejected in his heart. My performance just now was seen by the old ancestor. I wonder if he will be disappointed in me because of this? Good resolution. Jun Moxie applauded. Actually, the second condition is not that big of a deal. It's even simpler. That is, if I win, the 2 of you need to kneel down and kowtow to me 10 times, and call me Grandpa 10 times. Though, Zhan Yushu's eyes turned red with anger. What kind of condition is this? Although your Xian Qi cultivation is not high, with your free and natural physique, you can be considered as someone with status in the Misty Mansion. Why would you propose such a despicable condition? We agree. Zhan Qing Feng interrupted Zhan Yushu and looked at Jun Moxie fiercely. As long as you can win. Although this condition was more embarrassing, it was not something difficult to accept. Naturally, they had to agree to it. Great. As for the third condition, it's also simple. I'll copy your method. If I win, I can make any request to the Zhan family. No matter what it is, you must agree to it. You must do it. And there is no time limit for this request. I'll mention it whenever I want to. When I don't want to mention it, I won't mention it even if you beg me. June Moxie completed all 3 conditions in one go. It could be said to be extremely difficult, but it could also be said to be very simple. This condition won't do. You're all alone and don't have many attachments. But our Jean family has countless attachments. If you want the entire Jean family to commit suicide, do we have to listen to you? Jean Yushu's eyes rolled and he immediately called out, "You're all so afraid of death. Even if I make that request, it's useless." June Moxie shook his head and said, "Do I look like such a stupid person to you? Not only do you look like it, but you are." The 2 brothers cursed in their hearts. Now that the conditions had been settled, the next step was to find a witness. Naturally, there were already witnesses. There were descendants of 6 out of the 8 great families in the Misty Mansion. Adding on Miao Xiao Miao, 7 heavyweight witnesses were born. Every one of these 7 people had an extraordinary cultivation base. They had all reached the Supreme Martial Artist or beyond Supreme Martial Artist. Although this level of cultivation might not be enough in the eyes of real experts, it was already very commendable considering their age. Adding on the powerful forces behind them, it was not an exaggeration to say that they were heavyweight witnesses. In order to show that it was completely fair, Miao Xiao Miao specially ordered everyone to find the top experts from all walks of life to come forward as witnesses. In order to prevent all these people here from being bribed by the Jean family, Miao Xiao Miao directly invited 10 more people at once. As a result, the scene of this competition between the playboys was so grand that it couldn't be any grander. There were actually 17 witnesses. And any one of them could be ignored. Jean Yushu looked at June Moxie and snorted proudly. June Moxie looked at the Jean family brothers and also snickered sinisterly. Both sides felt that victory was in their hands and were secretly gloating. Everyone in the hall perked up. A good show was finally about to begin. Following that, someone went to fetch the 4 treasures of the study: brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Miao Xiao Miao wrote all the terms and conditions of the competition. Schwa, schwa, schwa. The brush moved like dragons and snakes, instantly appearing on the paper. Jean Yushu and Jean Qingfeng could not wait any longer. They immediately swore a vicious and cruel oath, biting their fingers and writing it down in blood, leaving a bloody handprint. Following that, the free and natural physique young master Mo also did the same. The bloody letter in the hall instantly increased the sinister and tense atmosphere of this competition. Chapter 945. Everyone knew that this competition concerned the future of these few people. No matter which side lost, they would be worse than dogs in the eyes of the other side. In fact, they wouldn't even be able to raise their heads in the Misty Mansion anymore. Words were no proof, and words were written as proof. And all the words were written in blood. And there were 17 leaders of different professions as witnesses. Both sides had no room for regrets. No one would have thought that the interests involved in this competition would actually be so great. The few talents that the Jean family had found were already regretting their decision. Since they were able to reach such a high level in their professions, they were naturally not fools. If they had known that it would be so serious, they wouldn't have come no matter what. It was just a moment of anger that caused them to lose their heads, and they were even mesmerized by the illusionary future that the 2 brothers of the Jean family had outlined, causing them to come, looks like they were in a dilemma today. If they won, they would definitely offend this free and natural physique prodigy. Thankfully, Mo Junye's current strength was still weak, so it wasn't too serious. And the most important thing was, they seemed to have offended Miao Xiao Miao as well. Offending Miao Xiao Miao was equivalent to offending the entire Miao family behind Miao Xiao Miao. They couldn't bear the consequences of this. But if they lost, they would be offending the Jean family. At that time, all of them would probably die a horrible death. Could it be that they were stuck in a dilemma? Die if they advanced, or die if they didn't? When June Moxie was signing the blood letter, Miao Xiao Miao asked anxiously, "Are you confident?" Young Miss Miao had already made up her mind. If he said that he wasn't confident, then she would immediately cause a huge ruckus here, beat up all these people, and even burn down the shop. Even if she was being unreasonable, She would still mess up this matter. June Moxie looked at her and said softly, 100%. These two words caused Miao Xiao Miao to stomp her feet angrily, scolding him countless times in her heart. Idiot. Psychomaniac. But there was nothing he could do. He could only watch anxiously as this guy signed his name in a relaxed and proud manner. But unexpectedly, he felt a sense of security in his heart, as if he was certain that the idiot and the egomaniac in front of him really had the strength to turn the tide and stand proudly above everyone else. But how could this be possible? In the hall, 17 tables were arranged in 2 rows. Miao Xiao Miao, who was also the notary, sat in the middle. The other unrelated people were directly driven 30 meters away, and they were completely reduced to spectators. Even Zhang Yushu was no exception. The only one who was allowed to watch from a close distance was Zhang Qingfeng. On the other hand, the bunch of scholars looked at each other in dismay. Who would be the first to fire the cannon was a problem that needed to be considered. If he won the first battle, then everything would be fine. But if he lost, it would be the same as giving up his life immediately. No matter how they thought about it, no one was willing to be the first to stand out. Looking at the person with the free and natural physique who was sitting leisurely in the center, everyone felt extremely aggrieved. Why was it that all of them were standing, but he could only sit and wait? But he had to deal with so many of them, and he was fighting for himself. What was the point of them standing there for? Young Master Mo, I am Lin Qingyin. I am willing to be the first to seek guidance from young Master Mo. I hope that young Master Mo will not be stingy with your guidance. Just as everyone was looking at each other, unable to make up their minds, a green-robed youth who had been standing at the back of the group all this while walked out silently and spoke to June Moxie. Lin Qingyin, what an elegant name. Looks like Brother Lin should be from a musical family, right? Not bad, not bad. Could it be that Brother Lin wishes to compete with me in musical skills? June Moxie looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. That's right. I am extremely ashamed, but this one has never cultivated in Xianqi before. The only thing I can take out is that I have some experience in music. Lin Qingyin said calmly. This time, there are 2 reasons for me to deal with Brother Mo. Firstly, I am a little unconvinced in my heart. Secondly, I have a reason that I have no choice but to come. After this matter is over, no matter who wins or loses, I, Lin Qingyin, will never see Brother Mo again. Otherwise, the feeling of guilt in my heart is truly too unbearable. June Moxie smiled lightly and said, looks like you have some misgivings in your heart? You must know that music is the voice of the heart. If you do not put your heart into it, it will be hard for you to reach the peak of music. But there's no need for you to do so. You can just treat it as making friends through music. At the very least, that's what I think right now. Just based on the words music is the voice of the heart, this Lin already knows that Brother Mo is a master of the music world. A pity that time is not with me, and there's nothing I can do. Lin Qingyin laughed bitterly. Suddenly, his face turned serious and he said, there's no point in speaking so much nonsense. This one had a sudden inspiration a few days ago, and came up with a song called Heartbreak Him. I hope Brother Mo will not be stingy with your guidance. As he said that, Lin Qingyin flipped his sleeves, and a dark green jade flute appeared in his hands. He lowered his head and gently caressed the dark green jade flute in his hands. Although Qingyin comes from a 1,000-year-old musical family, the only thing I'm most familiar with is the jade flute. It's also the only skill I know. I've already spent a full 26 years on this flute. This jade flute is the love of my life. It's also the only thing I've ever pursued in my entire life. Other than the flute, I have nothing else to ask for. In other words, you only know how to play the flute? As for the other musical instruments, you're not proficient in them? In fact, you don't even know how to play them? June Moxie asked. That's right. I've already said that other than the flute, I have nothing else to ask for. Lin Qingyin raised his head, his eyes clear. Respect. Instead of learning from others, it's better to specialize. It's a pity that not many people understand this logic anymore. For Brother Lin to be able to understand this logic, I'm truly impressed. Looks like the competition today will be far more interesting than I expected. June Moxie's expression also turned serious. Brother Mo is indeed a soulmate. Lin Qingyin's eyes lit up as he looked deeply at June Moxie. Then, he turned his head and looked at Zhan Yushu. Young Master Zhan, after this battle, regardless of the outcome, I hope that young Master Zhan will keep his promise and not make things difficult for my Lin family. Only then will Qing Yin give it his all. I hope that young Master Zhan will agree to this. The moment these words came out, everyone was stunned. So this Lin Qing Yin was actually threatened by Zhan Yushu. Zhan Yushu snorted coldly. My Zhan family has always been open and aboveboard. When have we ever gone back on our promises? You can rest assured. Could it be that you want me to write a blood oath for you as well? Lin Qingyin nodded. I don't dare to. I hope that second young Master Zhan will keep to his words. Lin Qingyin thanks you here. After this battle ends, this Lin will immediately take my leave and travel to the ends of the world with my family. In this lifetime, I will never come back to Heart Fantasy City again. Young Master Zhan can rest assured. Zhan Yushu snorted coldly and did not say anything else. He'd truly lost all his face today. But as long as he won the battle, all the losses would be worth it. Miao Xiao Miao let out a deep sigh. In truth, young Miss Miao really wanted to speak up and intervene. Although she did not know what had happened, there was no doubt that Zhan Yushu had used underhanded methods to force Lin Qingyin to submit. To think that someone from the Zhan family would actually do such a thing. He believed that as long as he promised to ensure the safety of Lin Qingyin and his family, he would be able to force them to explain the reason behind his actions. Perhaps, he would be able to turn the entire bet around. But after much consideration, he decided not to say anything. Could he really guarantee the safety of Lin Qingyin and his family? Perhaps the Miao family behind her could. But how could the Miao family be willing to offend the Zhan family, who was currently at the peak of their power, for a mere musician? Even if the Zhan family was despicable, shameless, and despicable, so what? As the saying goes, the winner takes all. As long as the Zhan family emerged victorious today, no one would bother about how they won. After Lin Qingyin received Zhan Yushu's affirmation, he knew that the other party would not go back on his word since he had already agreed to it in front of so many people. Turning around with a relaxed expression, he bowed deeply to June Moxie. Brother Mo, this one will use this jade flute to seek guidance from Brother Lin on the art of music. Please. Lin Qingyin's green robes fluttered in the wind as he stood in the middle of the hall. He did not start playing immediately, instead remaining motionless for a long time. After a long time, an indescribable sorrow surfaced in his eyes, but his expression was calm. The jade flute in his hand was finally lifted up slowly, and with every inch that the flute was lifted, the sorrow in his eyes deepened. By the time the first mournful sound of the flute rang out, the sorrow in Lin Qingyin's eyes had already reached a point where it could not be dispelled. Yet, his expression remained as calm as ever. The melodious sound of the flute rang out in the air above the hall, causing everyone who heard it to involuntarily feel a heaviness in their hearts, regardless of whether they were well versed in music theory or not. They felt an inexplicable pressure, as if the person they cared about the most had left them forever, and that regret was something that could never be made up for in their entire lives. It was a pain that was difficult to describe with words. No matter how high one's Xian cultivation was, or how one's mental state was, everyone was attracted to this tune. This was completely different from the soul assimilation technique or Xian Qi cultivation. It was purely the power of music. Music could be said to be a miraculous skill. It could always evoke the most sincere emotions in a person's heart. As the melody of the flute grew deeper and deeper, June Moxie could clearly feel the helplessness and sorrow in the depths of Lin Qingyin's heart. At this moment, he could clearly hear what this young master of a musical family had gone through. Amongst the judges present, there was a famous musician. But when he heard this sorrowful tune, his face involuntarily turned gloomy as he sighed repeatedly. Sitting in the middle of the hall was Miao Xiao Miao. Her face was covered by a white veil, and her expression could not be seen. However, there was a hint of sorrow in her eyes, and her lips were moving slightly. If anyone could read her lips, they would definitely be able to see that Miao Xiao Miao was currently reciting, "The flowers in the forest have withered and turned red, too hurried. Helpless, the cold rain comes in the morning, the wind comes in the evening. Rouge tears, leaving one drunk. When will it be over again? Chapter 946. The song had ended, but Lin Qingyin was still standing there in a daze. His expression had not changed at all, and only his eyes were filled with confusion. The jade flute was still by his lips, and he was still in the posture of playing the flute. The sorrowful aura around him did not dissipate at all. There was complete silence. After a long time, Lin Qingyin finally put down his hands. With a completely disheartened expression, he turned to Jun Moxie and said, "Brother Mo, for this first round, I do not request for Brother Mo to compete with me in playing the flute. Instead, I would like to ask Brother Mo, how is my heart-shattering chant? Where are the flaws? Who is it written for? If there are any regrets, how can it be remedied? From now on, where will my path be?" When Lin Qingyin said the words, "I do not request for Brother Mo to compete with me in playing the flute," Zhang Yushu's expression tightened, and a sinister look flashed across his eyes. But when he heard the next few words, his expression immediately calmed down. From the way he heard it, these questions of Lin Qingyin were simply purposely making things difficult for him. Everyone had their own stories in their hearts, and they would be struck by inspiration. Only then would they be able to compose something. Using a song that he had just heard, he asked who this song was written for. This Mo Junyi had never even seen Lin Qingyin before. How would he know who it was written for? If this wasn't purposely making things difficult for him, then what was it? As for the flaws, and how to remedy them, that was even more ridiculous. Zhang Yushu had always prided himself on being a talented young man, and he was also rather knowledgeable in the Tao of music. He felt that this song was the best he had ever heard in his life. Such a good song, and yet he was asking about the flaws. If he really had to ask about the flaws, then other than the composer himself, everyone else's mental state was completely different from his. When it came to composing, the slightest difference in one's mental state could make a world of difference. How would Mo Junyi know? And the last question, where would his path be in the future? This was even more difficult. You are someone who is always focused on learning music. Could it be that your path is still Xianqi? But, when he asked this question, it was as if he did not wish to continue in this field anymore. If that was the case, then it would be hard to say. Looks like this fellow still did not forget my warning. I want to see how this Mo Junyi handles this round. Zhang Yushu couldn't help but feel a little smug. Actually, it wasn't just Zhang Yushu who thought this way. Everyone else, regardless of whether they were knowledgeable or not, had the same thoughts. In that moment, the way they looked at Lin Qingyin was filled with admiration. This fellow was truly a dog that knew how to bite. Not only did he not bark, he even knew how to gain the goodwill of others before biting down viciously. Just one bite was enough to be fatal. Then, looking at the free and natural physique genius who seemed to be deep in thought, everyone began to gloat. Let's see how you will reply. In fact, the audience was already feeling a little regretful. Such a grand scene might have ended in just one round. There was nothing more to see. A look of amusement appeared in the eyes of the music theory expert on the stage. What these people did not know was that although Lin Qingyin looked like he was deliberately making things difficult for them, he was actually going easy on them. This was something that those who did not immerse themselves in music would not understand. Because everything was told to Jun Moxie by the sound of the flute. Whatever Jun Moxie heard, he only needed to say it out loud, and he would pass. This song, Heartbreaking Chant, is indeed not bad. It is indeed a rare song. If we look at it from the point of view of the song itself, there is no mistake at all. A song that breaks one's heart, where in the world can one find a soulmate, can be said to be perfect. Jun Moxie said slowly. Only, if we look at it from the point of view of the song's artistic conception, it will be a little biased. As Jun Dashao spoke up to hear, the music expert on the judging panel was already visibly moved. His bright eyes stared at Jun Moxie's face, not blinking at all, afraid that he would miss out on the rest of his words. The so-called song is nothing more than the emotional sustenance of us performers. Regardless of whether it is sadness or happiness, or even rage or slaughter, it can all be expressed through music. However, other than expressing the performer's own emotions, the performer also has to be responsible for all those who have heard the song. A truly good song is one that is joyful but not obscene, sorrowful but not hurtful. After listening to it, one's body and mind will feel relaxed and at ease. Even if it is a sorrowful song, the intent is to evoke the same feelings in the hearts of those who listen to it, thus reducing the pressure on their hearts. Brother Lin's song is sorrowful, but it also causes those who listen to it to feel extremely stifled. After listening to the song, one could not help but feel a sense of hopelessness and despair. But it is completely different from the original meaning of the Tao of music. Although it is not the exact opposite, it still feels as though it has gone astray. June Moxie smiled lightly. It can be said that the most successful aspect of this song is also its biggest flaw. Well said. On the judging panel, the old man exclaimed excitedly. The others who were more knowledgeable also nodded their heads in agreement. Such a statement was not only accurate, it also hit the nail on the head, hitting the nail on the head. Lin Qingyin thought deeply for a moment before nodding his head slowly. Then, since that's the case, how should we remedy it? Remedy? It can be simple or difficult. Jun Mo Xie said indifferently, I'm not contradicting myself. It's just that this song is the voice of the heart. I've also said that this song has reached a state of perfection. There's nothing wrong with it. The real problem is your state of mind. Such a sorrowful song, yet your expression remained unchanged from start to finish. From this, it can be seen that you played this song with a state of extreme despair. The name Heartbreaking Him already represents its true meaning. The so-called remedy is to change your mental state. As long as you change your mental state, the concept will change as well. If you are unable to change your mental state, any remedy would be meaningless. This is also the true meaning of what I said earlier. It can be easy or difficult. You might say that if you change your mental state of despair, you would lose the original meaning of this song. But I would like to ask you, is life really so hopeless? Why not try from a different angle? Try changing your mental state of despair into longing. That should be enough. I believe that the person who could make you compose this song wholeheartedly must have a very deep relationship with you. Furthermore, there must be many beautiful memories between the two of you. These memories are your most precious treasures, treasures that no one would be able to invade or plunder. If you were to think of these past events while playing this song, and even infuse those emotions into the song, I believe that it would definitely be different. At that time, we would only be able to hear sorrow and longing, and not despair. Only in this way can the Heartbreaking Hymn be called a flawless song. It will allow Brother Lin and the person you are longing for to never be forgotten. Lin Qingyin stood there in a daze, his eyes glistening with tears. As for who it was for, I've already vaguely mentioned it earlier. Brother Lin, if I'm not wrong, this song should have been written for your lover. Jun Mo Xie looked at him warmly and said, and this lover of yours should have passed away due to an accident. It's not because the grieving person has other hugs. Otherwise, there should be resentment and hatred in your song. Since there is no such thing, the conclusion can only be, Lin Qingyin let out a long breath and closed his eyes, muttering as if he was in a dream, not bad. Brother Mo is right. So what if the song is perfect? A song that breaks my heart. Where can I find a soulmate in the world? Xiaoling, my Xiaoling. I will never be able to see her again. In his tightly shut eyes, a beautiful smiling face suddenly appeared in front of him. Bright eyes, cute and adorable. Suddenly, it turned into a pair of misty eyes, a withered face lying on a sickbed. In that instant, Lin Qingyin's mind was in a daze. It was as though he had returned to the past, to the time when he and that lover of his whom he swore to live and die together, sitting facing each other under the moonlight, in the midst of wind and rain. Xiao Ling ah. Lin Qingyin let out a long sigh as tears flowed down his cheeks. Jun Moxie fell silent for a moment before reciting softly, it's hard to meet, but it's also hard to say goodbye. The east wind is weak, and the 100 flowers wither. The silkworm's silk only ends when it dies, and the candle's tears dry when it turns to ash. Brother Lin's love is truly admirable. However, if that Miss Xiaoling were to see you like this, I'm afraid that no matter where she goes, she would be deeply worried and filled with hatred. This poem was truly worthy of being Li Shangyin's masterpiece. Although it was only half a poem, when it was recited word by word, it caused the entire audience to be moved. As Miao Xiao Miao chewed on these few lines, she felt a lingering fragrance in her mouth. She could not help but be intoxicated by it. Such deep love, such beauty. Why was it that every single word that came from his mouth was so engraved into one's soul? Suddenly, her heart tightened. If he had not experienced such a thing personally, how could he have written such a touching poem? Could it be that he's already? As she thought of this, a strange feeling rose up in Miao Xiao Miao's heart. It was as if she was feeling heartache for him, and also as if she was feeling sad for herself. The silkworm's silk only ends when it dies, and the candle's tears dry when it turns to ash. Lin Qingyin muttered in a daze. All of a sudden, a sense of sorrow welled up in his heart as he asked, "May I ask Brother Mo, what should I do from now on?" "Follow your heart." Jun Mo Xie looked at the sentimental man in front of him with some pity. "Brother Lin, you have your own path to take. You know what you should do, and what you shouldn't do. Being sentimental is not a bad thing, but don't let it become a cage for you. Break through this cage, and in this world, there's nothing you can't do." Many thanks for Brother Mo's guidance. Lin Qingyin clasped his hands and bowed deeply, his face full of gratitude as he said, "Brother Mo's comprehension of the Tao of music is indeed much better than mine. This lowly one admits defeat. Her joy is not lascivious, sorrow is not hurt. Qingyin will definitely remember Brother Mo's teachings. It's a pity that after today's farewell, we will not meet again." Here, Qingyin wishes Brother Mo to turn misfortune into fortune, turning misfortune into fortune, and achieving great things soon. Many thanks for Brother Lin's auspicious words. Jun Moxie smiled lightly. The meaning behind Lin Qingyin's words of turning misfortune into fortune, turning misfortune into fortune, was naturally referring to the perilous situation before them. His blessings were very subtle, and it even implied that he was cursing the Zhan family brothers. How could Jun Moxie not understand this? Lin Qingyin laughed heartily and returned to his seat with his jade flute in hand. The first battle, the free and natural physique great prodigy Mo had won. Looking at the judges raising the victory sign to Jun Moxie at the same time, Zhang Yushu's face turned extremely dark. Chapter 947. Just now, the person in question, Lin Qingyin, had already admitted defeat, and all the judges had already given their verdict. But to try and stir things up like this was too much. Furthermore, asking Jun Mo Xie to play a song that was even better than the Heartbreak Hymn was even more shameless. Just now, young Master Jun had already said that the song itself had already reached a state of perfection. It was only the performer's state of mind that was slightly flawed, causing the white to be slightly blurry. But to actually ask Jun Mo Xie to play a song that was even better than the Heartbreak Hymn was clearly making things difficult for him. The victor is clear. Don't tell me you guys want to continue messing around? Miao Xiao Miao's brows furrowed, and her phoenix eyes were filled with rage. He hasn't even touched a musical instrument before. How can you say that the victor is clear? That voice was unrelenting. Jun Moxie's divine sense had already locked onto the person who was shouting. He was standing far away in the crowd, hiding his head behind someone's back. His head was lowered and he was shouting at the top of his lungs. Normally, people who shouted like this would have a very agitated expression on their faces. But this fellow clearly had a guilty look on his face, afraid that others would recognize him. Zhan Qingfeng's expression did not change, but a hint of smugness flashed across his eyes. This person was the backup he had arranged beforehand. If Mo Jun Yi won, no matter what the reason was, he had to find this person. Even if he had to find a bone in an egg, he had to overturn Mo Jun Ye's victory. Jun Moxie only needed to sweep his divine sense once to understand everything. He sneered coldly in his heart. If you guys knew that I'm that Dong Fong who played the smiling, proud pugilistic world at Chrysanthemum City's Tongguan Hall. I'm afraid you guys wouldn't be in such a hurry to give me a chance to perform. The heartbreaking hymn is indeed perfect, but perfection can also be divided into different grades. As the saying goes, justice is in the hearts of the people. Fine, since someone has raised a doubt, then I shall play a song for everyone. Lest someone finds a bone in an egg and continues to act shamelessly. Do you think I'm right, young Master Jean? Jun Moxie looked at Jean Qing Feng with a smile that was not a smile. Of course. If you want to win, you must have overwhelming strength. Jean Qing Feng smiled faintly and said, victory and defeat cannot be decided just by talking. Yeah, but when it comes to overturning the outcome of a battle, you can't just rely on your glib tongue. Jun Moxie chuckled and said, it's even more impossible to rely on some shady methods and people who don't even dare to show their faces. My dear friend, since you have the guts to speak, why don't you stand out? I can guarantee that I will not pursue this matter, regardless of whether what you said is your own will or the will of others. The moment this sentence came out, Miao Xiao Miao burst out laughing. With her strength, she had naturally discovered that person. And the battle of words between Jun Moxie and Jean Qing Feng had also allowed her to instantly understand everything that had happened. Ever since she came here, she had never seen Jean Qing Feng speak a single word to this person. From the looks of it, this person must have been arranged by Jean Qing Feng. Who would have thought that this person was so far-sighted and meticulous to think of defeat before thinking of victory? He had actually arranged everything in advance. But because of this, she became even more wary of Jean Qing Feng. Then, wasn't everything that he had done previously, all those actions that made her feel warm, all a part of this person's meticulous plan? What was he trying to achieve by taking such painstaking effort to please her? Or rather, what was the Jean family trying to do? In Miao Xiao Miao's heart, this was the first time she had raised this problem to the level of the entire Jean family. She couldn't help but be alarmed. Brother Lin, this little brother didn't expect that there would be a meeting like this. I don't have any musical instruments with me, so I can only lend you my jade flute. Jun Moxie nodded with a smile. Lin Qingyin nodded with a smile and took out the jade flute. After carefully wiping it in clean water, he used a piece of white silk to carry the jade flute over to Jun Moxie. In the Misty Mansion, this kind of method was the greatest respect a musician could show to a fellow musician. Originally, with Lin Qingyin's status as a great musician, he naturally had his own principles. It was impossible for him to lend an instrument that never left his side to someone else. But from Lin Qingyin's actions, everyone could clearly feel the atmosphere. That was, Mo Junyi was borrowing Lin Qingyin's jade flute to perform a song. The one who should feel honored was Lin Qingyin himself, as well as the jade flute. Jun Moxie received the jade flute and felt as though it was weightless. He couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "Good flute." This jade flute was practically weightless in his hands. Such a quality of jade could only be achieved by the extremely rare light spirit jade. A good flute must also be matched with a good person. In my hands, this jade flute is truly a waste. Right now, I can only place my hopes on Brother Mo. I hope that in Brother Mo's hands, it will be able to produce a different sound. Lin Qingyin laughed dejectedly as he retreated back into the jade flute. Brother Lin is too humble. Jun Moxie laughed lightly as he looked at the jade flute in his hands. The song I'm about to play was written by a lady, and it has been passed down for hundreds of years. Perhaps the heavens were jealous of her beauty, but this beautiful lady had always been frowning in sorrow her entire life. Her body was frail, and she passed away before she even reached the age of 20. A beauty that could topple an entire generation had vanished into the dust, causing everyone to sigh in pity. However, because of our remote location, this song has never been passed down. Back then, I was fortunate enough to learn this song by chance. Today, I'll play it for everyone to enjoy. As he said this, the ears of many of the judges perked up. Clearly, this was a song that no one had heard before. And it was even composed by a lady. This lady was indeed a beauty that could topple an entire city. However, because of her frail body, she was always bedridden and rarely went out. Her greatest joy was to watch the flowers bloom and wilt in front of the courtyard, and to watch the clouds roll and move. That day, hundreds of flowers bloomed in the garden, and she spent the entire day admiring them. Her heart was filled with joy, and she decided to go again the next day. But on that very night, a strong wind blew, and a light rain fell. The thousands of flowers that were in full bloom all withered in a single night. As June Moxie spoke up to this point, Meow Xiao Meow could not help but let out a soft ah. If this lady was in her place, she would definitely be extremely heartbroken. Especially since this lady was bedridden and her heart was naturally weak. To have her few pleasures destroyed because of a sudden change in nature, wouldn't that be even more unbearable? As expected, June Moxie said. She heard the sound of the wind and the rain at night, and her heart was already extremely anxious. When the sun had just risen the next day, she put on her clothes and went to the garden to see her favorite flowers. But what was placed in front of her was a tragic scene of fallen red flowers. She was very sad. Yesterday there were still thousands of flowers, but today they had withered to this state. However, even though she was sad, she could not bear to see these petals being crushed in the mud. So, she swept all the petals on the ground, put them in a sachet, and buried them. Just as she was burying the flowers, she suddenly thought of herself. Wasn't she also in the prime of her life? But she was seriously ill and might not be able to leave this world. So, if she could bury the flowers today, who would bury her in the future? Perhaps it was because she was touched by the scene, or perhaps it was because of her heart. This extraordinary lady improvised a poem named Song of the Burial of Flowers. The song that I am going to play today was composed by her, and it was a song that she composed herself. And that woman, within 3 days after the song was composed, passed away. After hearing Brother Mo's words, I really can't wait to listen to this Song of the Burial of Flowers. Meow Xiao Meow's eyes were filled with fascination, and she said with great interest, but before Brother Mo plays the song, can you first write down the poem? Since Lady Meow has asked, of course I can. June Moxie said generously. Meow Xiao Meow waved her hand, and the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone were brought over. She placed them in front of her, and said with a smile, Brother Mo, you only need to recite the poem. Leave the recording to me. That's good. June Moxie understood what she meant. They might have to compete in calligraphy in a while, so it was better not to reveal his trump card for the time being. The two of them acted as if they were singing a two-man show, one after the other, as if there was no one else around, and the atmosphere of the song was enhanced. The Song of the Burial of Flowers had yet to be played, but it had already penetrated deep into the hearts of the people and tugged at their heartstrings. First, a touching story was told to evoke the resonance in the hearts of the people. Then, the related lyrics were written out, and it was shown in front of everyone. Finally, the song was officially played. This undoubtedly allowed the power of the song to reach an unprecedented level. As Meow Xiao Meow dipped the brush in her hand into the ink, June Moxie softly recited the song, the once popular Song of the Burial of Flowers on Earth, a song that almost everyone, regardless of age or gender, could recite, finally blossomed with its unique splendor in this different world. Flowers wilt and fly all over the sky, who will pity the fragrance when the red is gone? Soft gossamer threads float in the spring pavilion, and the falling catkins lightly touch the embroidered curtain. The daughter in her boudoir cherishes the twilight of spring, and her heart is full of melancholy with nowhere to vent. She holds a hoe in her hand out of her boudoir, and bears to step on the fallen flowers. Willow silk and elm pods are fragrant, no matter if the peach floats or the plum flies. If the peach and plum can bloom again next year, who will know next year's boudoir? 3 months of incense has been built. The swallows between the beams are too heartless. Although the flowers can be pecked next year, it doesn't mean that the Taoist is gone and the nest is empty. 360 days a year, wind, sabers, and frost swords pressed against each other. How long can you be bright and beautiful? Once you drift, it is hard to find. It is easy to see flowers when they bloom, but hard to find when they fall. Leaning on a hoe, I shed tears on the branches above. I saw traces of blood. The cuckoo was speechless. At dusk, she returned with her pickaxe and closed the heavy door. The green lamp shines on the wall and the man is asleep. The cold rain knocks on the window and the quilt is not warm. Blame the slave for being so troublesome? Half of it was because he felt sorry for the spring, and the other half was because he was annoyed. Lien Chun suddenly came and went in anger. In the end she left without a word. Last night there was a sad song outside the courtyard. Who knows if it was the soul of a flower or a soul of a bird? It is hard to keep the soul of a flower and the soul of a bird. The bird is speechless and the flower is ashamed. I wish for a pair of wings to grow on my side and fly with the flowers to the end of the sky. At the end of the sky, where is the fragrant mound? It is not like a brocade bag containing beautiful bones, a piece of pure land covering up romantic affairs. It is better to be clean than to sink into a ditch with filth. Now that you have died, I will bury you. When will I mourn? Today I bury the flowers, but who will I know when I will be buried? Look at the withered flowers of spring. It is the time for a beauty to die of old age. Once the spring is over, the beauty will grow old, the flower will fall and the person will die without anyone knowing. As Jun Moxie recited and Miao Xiao Miao wrote, everyone was immersed in this sorrowful yet beautiful and elegant poem. Even the two brothers Zhan Qingfeng and Zhan Yushu, who were always against Jun Moxie, could not say a single word at this moment. There was actually such a beautiful poem in this world. And every word and sentence was so real, so close to everyone's life. That helplessness, that carefreeness in the face of life and death, using flowers as a metaphor for one's aloofness. Chapter 948. As for Miao Xiao Miao, she couldn't help but fall into a daze as the lines of the poem appeared in front of her eyes. 360 days a year, the wind and the frost press against each other. How long can the bright and fresh beauty last? Once drifting, it's hard to find, at the end of the sky, where is the hill of incense? Not like a brocade bag to collect beautiful bones, a piece of pure land to cover up romantic affairs. The essence of purity comes and goes, stronger than being trapped in a ditch by filth. Now that you are dead, I bury you. When will you mourn? Today I bury flowers, I laugh like a fool. Who will I bury in the future? Look at the waning flowers of spring. It's time for a beauty to die of old age. At the end of spring, a beauty will grow old, the flowers will fall, and the person will die without anyone knowing. As she wrote, Miao Xiao Miao's eyes couldn't help but moisten. It was as if she could see a thin and sickly woman with a frail and delicate body strenuously picking up the petals scattered on the ground. Then, she collected the petals one by one and put them into a sachet that she personally sewed. Then, she gently buried them on the ground, and finally turned them into a fragrant soul. In a trance, Miao Xiao Miao could almost feel that the woman was herself. Although I don't have that sickly body, living in this misty mansion, I'm constantly under the power struggle. It's hard to guarantee that one day, I'll become a tool for family marriage and be forced to marry someone I don't like at all, or even hate. If that's the case, it's really better than not like a brocade bag to collect beautiful bones, a piece of pure land to cover up romantic affairs. The essence of purity comes and goes, stronger than being trapped in a ditch by filth. Just when everyone was immersed in the beautiful artistic conception of this poem, a faint sound of a flute suddenly sounded, as if it came from the end of the sky. Song of the Burial of Flowers. One song of the burial of flowers, and 100 people's souls were all hurt. The sound of the flute sobbed, as if it was crying and complaining. The myriad of colors, all kinds of charm, and all kinds of amorous feelings were slowly displayed in everyone's hearts, and then slowly disappeared, and finally turned into nothingness, becoming a wisp of melancholy. A long time after the song ended, no one spoke. It was as if that beautiful flute music was still lingering in the air, lingering for 3 days. Sigh. This song? The music master could not help but rub the corner of his eyes. There was a clear tear there. It's really amazing. It's like a divine song from the heavens. For an ordinary person, to be able to hear it played once in their life would be enough for them. That's right, Miao Xiao Miao's consciousness was still wavering from the music, and her voice was somewhat dreamy, as if her soul had left her body. Her eyes were hazy as she muttered, "This is the most beautiful song I've heard in my entire life. Perfect? No, this was a perfect song." Brother Mo's song allowed Qingyin to finally understand the true meaning of music. What is the true Tao of music? After hearing this song today, Qingyin suddenly felt that everything I've learned in the past is not worth mentioning at all. To think that I'm the #1 in music among the younger generation of the Misty Mansion, boasting shamelessly. But who would have thought that true music? I've never even touched the edge of it, Lin Qingyin said in an intoxicated manner. When he said this, even Zhan Yushu could not help but nod his head. He was also someone who was well versed in music, and at this moment he really did not want to speak against his conscience. Only then did he realize that it was not in line with his position, and so he shook his head. But he also felt that shaking his head would be a disservice to his conscience, and so he nodded his head again. Song of the Burial of Flowers, the melody was perfect and flawless. The beauty of the melody was something that no one had ever heard in their lives. That helpless sorrow, that desolation that caused one to waver endlessly, and that prideful and pure heart, made everyone's hearts tremble in admiration. After hearing such a perfect song, everyone was in unison and applauded it. Even Zhan Qingfeng's people could not find any fault with this song. Jun Moxie had won the first battle with an overwhelming advantage. No one dared to compare it with the Song of the Shattering Heart anymore. Because this was like the difference between the heavens and the earth, there was no way to compare. Brother, may I ask the name of this talented lady? Although Jun Xie had said that this girl had already passed away several hundred years ago, but after hearing the Song of the Burial of Flowers, Lin Qingyin felt as if he had seen that frail and sickly girl sweep away the fallen flowers by herself in the autumn wind and rain. Although Jun Xie had said that this girl had already passed away a few hundred years ago, after hearing the Song of the Burial of Flowers, Lin Qingyin felt as if he had seen it with his own eyes. He almost wished that he could be there at that time to console that beautiful lady who had suffered a tragic fate. Speaking of which, what a coincidence. Her surname is also Lin, and she is of the same family as you, Brother Lin. Jun Moxie sighed lightly. Her name is Lin Daiyu. Jun Moxie sighed with emotion. After transmigrating to this world, he finally understood one thing. The advantage of being a transmigrator was simply too great. Not to mention anything else, anyone who had attended primary school on Earth would definitely be able to bring along a portion of the 5,000 years of Chinese civilization when they transmigrated to this world, especially the poems and songs that the ancient people worshipped. If brought over here, it would be an invincible existence. Her surname is actually Lin as well. What a beautiful lady with a pure heart. Lin Qingyin sighed lightly as he sighed with melancholy. Brother Mo, this Song of the Burial of Flowers, can you make a copy of it for me? Miao Xiao Miao asked softly with a hint of embarrassment in her voice. Of course you can. It is an honor for this Mo to be able to serve Miss Miao. Jun Moxie naturally agreed. To receive such a wonderful song from Brother Mo, Xiao Miao is truly grateful. Miao Xiao Miao smiled shyly as a hint of gentleness flashed past her eyes. A look of intense jealousy flashed past the eyes of Zhan Yushu and Zhan Qingfeng. The way they looked at Jun Moxie also turned especially vicious. With Jun Dashao's spiritual sense, he could naturally sense those two strong resentments. Looking at them from the corner of his eyes, he suddenly had a thought. On the surface, it seemed like Zhan Yushu was pursuing Miao Xiao Miao, and Zhan Qingfeng was only assisting his younger brother. But why was there such a look in Zhan Qingfeng's eyes as well? Could it be that Zhan Qingfeng also had ambitions towards Miao Xiao Miao? The reason why he got close to Miao Xiao Miao was not purely because of his younger brother? If that was really the case, then Zhan Yushu was probably still in the dark. Perhaps Zhan Qingfeng was the only one who understood all of this. Then, was it worth making use of this point of hers? If he made use of this point well, it would probably be the starting point of the Zhan family brothers breaking off completely. There were two things that men absolutely could not tolerate. The first was the betrayal of their most trusted brother. The second was that they would never allow anyone to have designs on their woman. As for Zhang Qingfeng, it seemed like he had already possessed both of them. If this secret was revealed to the brothers, it would probably be very lively, perhaps even more lively than today. Jun Moxie was secretly calculating in his heart, but his expression did not change. The result of the first round was very obvious. The free and natural physique great prodigy Mo had won. No one had any objections. If they continued to pester endlessly, they would probably be scolded to death by the others. Although the first round had ended, it was only the beginning of this gamble. Next, it was naturally the second round. The original plan was naturally to follow up with the second round immediately after the first round. They must not give this fellow any time to catch his breath. But after the song of the burial of flowers, before everyone could even regain their senses, no one actually came out to fight, and the entire field was empty. Humans were always like this. They were filled with jealousy and dissatisfaction towards those who were just a little bit better than them. But if the other party was really much better than them, then it would form a kind of admiration and worship. For example, if a 10,000 yuan household was compared to a 100,000 yuan household, they would only think that the latter's luck was better than theirs. If it was me, I can do it too. But if they were compared to Superman Lee, no matter if it was a 10,000 yuan household or a 100,000 yuan household, they would only worship him. Because the person they were comparing to was a legend. Compared to a true legend, were they retarded? Right now, Jun Moxie was the same. Before the first round, great prodigy Mo was only a legendary prodigy. But now, he was a true prodigy. Everyone's feelings were naturally different. In truth, the main reason why these people who wanted to compete with Jun Dashao came here today was because they had been enticed by the Zhan family. As for people like Lin Qingyin, they were directly forced to come here, but in the future, as outstanding geniuses, they were also unconvinced in their hearts. These people all had rather impressive achievements in their respective fields. Although they were still far from achieving success, there were still quite a number of them who had a great reputation in the misty illusory manner, becoming famous at a young age, who wouldn't be proud. But the moment this free and natural physique prodigy came, he immediately grabbed the attention of all the upper echelons of the Misty Mansion. No matter what kind of achievements they had, in front of the legendary free and natural physique prodigy, they were all not worth mentioning at all. Especially since this physique was innate, and had nothing to do with this Mo Junye's hard work. This made everyone feel even more unbalanced. But after seeing him today, especially after the song of the burial of flowers, everyone retracted the arrogance in their hearts. They were undoubtedly very proud, and they were all hoping that they could gain something from today's event. But that didn't mean that they could go against their conscience. The other party's attainments in music had actually reached such a high level. Just this point alone was enough to make everyone look at him in a different light. Not to mention that he was also a prodigy with the free and natural physique. Regardless of talent, he was still an outstanding talent. How about I go up against Brother Mo in the second round? Finally, another person walked out. This time, it was a youth. He was skinny and had a steady posture. His face was full of confidence, as if everything under the heavens was within his grasp. His eyes shone brightly. But this kind of light did not come from cultivating Xianqi. Instead, it was because his eyes were exceptionally spirited and full of life. Although this youth was not old, his aura was extremely steady. With a single look, Jun Moxie could tell that this youth's mental fortitude was something that even some of the more experienced old fellows could not compare to. "May I know who you are?" Jun Moxie looked at him. Chapter 949. So it's Brother Qi, my apologies for not recognizing you. Jun Moxie nodded slightly. Originally, the Tao of chess is just an insignificant branch, just an insignificant skill. It's naturally harmless to use it to cultivate one's mind and body, but if it's used to fight for victory, then it's not good enough. Brother Mo's song moves one's soul. You're a refined person. Can you play a game with me? It has nothing to do with victory or defeat, just do your best. Qi Wanjie said with a smile. His name was originally Qi Wanjie, but after he became famous, he changed his name to Qi Wanjie, changing his name from Jiet to Jie. This was to show that in the game of chess, there were thousands of changes and tens of thousands of tribulations, causing others to be unable to see through him. Of course, it wasn't without pride. Jun Moxie couldn't help but laugh coldly in his heart. Looks like this fellow should be the main force to deal with him, and this fellow should be good at scheming, and his character was also very hypocritical. Just from that one sentence alone, it had already been completely revealed. You keep saying if it's used to fight for victory, then it's not good enough, but you're asking me to play a game with you? It actually has nothing to do with victory or defeat, just do your best. Since it's a game of chess, if one doesn't have the intention to win, how can one win? Especially in the Tao of chess, one must be calculative in order to be able to calculate one's own position on the chessboard, calculate one's own advantages and disadvantages, and then make changes. To be able to be hypocritical to such an extent at such a young age, he can be considered as one of a kind. This person is a hypocrite, but this young master has met quite a number of hypocrites. Not to mention others, just Li Yuran's cultivation is much higher than yours, but even Li Yuran is much more practical than you. What the hell is this? That's natural. Brother Qi's words can be said to be completely correct. It really resonates with me. The Tao of chess, even if it's studied to the most profound level, is merely revolving in a small area, an insignificant skill. It really lives up to its name. Jun Moxie naturally didn't think so in his heart. Not only was the chess skill not an insignificant skill now, but it could also bring glory to the country, but now he had to continue like this. This was because when Jun Moxie saw the squinty eyes in front of him, he became angry. If you want to help the Zhan family brothers deal with me, then do it openly. To think that you still have to put on a sanctimonious act and say such bullsh**. You're purposely trying to make this young master feel disgusted. If I don't give you a good beating, how would I be able to stand up to your pretense? Qi Wanjie. Motherfucker, I'll just let you beat Qi Wanjie. Let's just completely end it here. You dare to play mind games with me, see if I don't play you to death. However, I'm not very good at chess. I've only learned it for a few months. But, since Brother Qi said it's just a small trick, I'll accompany Brother Qi for some entertainment. After all, it's just to cultivate the body and mind, and it has nothing to do with winning or losing. I think I should be able to do it. Jun Dashao said in a hypocritical manner. Brother Mo is really humorous. Since Brother Mo also says that the way of chess is an insignificant skill, then don't blame me for not showing mercy. A cold light flashed in Qi Wanjie's eyes, but he still maintained his elegance as he spoke indifferently. Oh, not showing mercy? Brother Qi is a gentleman, and a famous person doesn't do underhanded things. But, I have a question in front of you. If I blame you for being merciless, then will you be merciful? Jun Mo Xie asked in a taunting manner. Facing someone like Brother Mo, I believe no one will show mercy. Qi Wanjie was already a little impatient. This Mo Junyi was really too detestable. I was just being humble just now, and you actually stepped on my nose and took it too far, is that so? Brother Qi's words really displeased me. I originally thought that as a chess king, your elegance would naturally be a notch higher than others. Even if you're not open and above board, you wouldn't go back on your words. But I didn't expect that what you said just now was like farting. When other people fart, it stinks for a while, but you actually swallowed it back. I'm really impressed, really impressed. This skill, this composure, is truly #1 in the world. As expected of the chess king, you live up to your reputation. It's really true that hearing about you is not as good as seeing you in person, and seeing you in person is even better than hearing about you. I'm impressed, I'm impressed, I'm impressed, I'm really impressed. This skill, this composure, is truly the #1 in the world. As expected of the chess king, you live up to your reputation. Seeing that he had already successfully disrupted his state of mind, Jun Moxie naturally wanted to follow up with another attack. In the path of chess, one state of mind was the most important. If one state of mind was not stable, Even a peerless national player might lose to a child who had just started playing chess. This was definitely not something too surprising. Mo Junyi. Anger finally appeared on Qi Wanjie's face, and he said, "Let's see who will be utterly defeated today, leaving nothing behind." Utterly defeated? Completely annihilated? It seems to be quite serious. I'll only say one thing. Little brother, you're not allowed to cry when you lose, Jun Moxie said in a solemn tone. Although you're still young, if you cry when you lose in such an occasion, that would really not look too good. Qi Wanjie's face was already a little pale, and he snorted heavily. At this time, his followers had already arranged the chess pieces on the chessboard. He no longer paid any attention to Jun Moxie and walked towards the chessboard. Evidently, he could not wait to torture this free and natural physique in the chess game. I don't care what free and natural physique you have, but since you've offended me, I won't let you have any face. Especially when second young Master Zhan promised me a huge mansion and the position of the chess master of the Misty Mansion chess house, as well as 4 beautiful concubines. I must obtain all of these. I must obtain them, I must succeed. I must step over your body. Prepare to become my stepping stone, legendary prodigy. Although Jun Moxie's face was calm and collected, his heart was beating like a drum. Back when he was training in Go, he had only dabbled in it a little. Although Jun Xie's comprehension was not bad, and his abilities were not weak, it was only not weak. He was far from reaching the level of a so-called professional player. With Jun Dushao's true level, if placed in the current Go world, he would at most be at the level of an amateur 7 or 8 Dan. With this level of ability, it would not be a problem for him to deal with most situations. But if he were to compete with a true Go expert, the chances of him winning would be extremely slim. And this was all thanks to that old thing in his previous life. The old thing's requirements for a so-called qualified assassin were ridiculously high. He wanted the assassin to be familiar with all the relatively common skills, as well as to have a good grasp of unorthodox knowledge. Only then would he be able to perfectly conceal himself in any situation and kill the target silently. But this requirement was not something a human could achieve, because in his previous life, the evil monarch had not actually completed all of it. At most, he had only completed 70% of the training set by that old thing. The old man had a wish in his heart, to create the ultimate legend in the world of assassins. Even if one day that legend stopped being an assassin and put down the butcher's knife, and went to a university to become a doctoral supervisor of any subject, anyone who heard this would understand that this was an extremely crazy and perverted terrifying plan. Zither, chess, calligraphy, poetry, wine, tea, the 3 religions and 9 schools of thought, medicine, astrology, irrigation, the 8 major subjects, physics, chemistry, even Jun Moxie would feel a headache whenever he thought about it. However, after coming to this different world, while Jun Moxie felt a headache, he was also infinitely grateful for the cruel training back then. If it wasn't for the old man forcing him to learn these things, he would never be able to do as well as he did now. Even if he had a super cheating device like the Hongjun Pagoda, it wouldn't work. Without a basic foundation, even if he was given a peerless martial arts secret manual, he would still be at a loss. At least now, he was somewhat regretful. Why didn't he study Go properly back then? As long as he could reach the level of a professional 5th or 6th Dan, he wouldn't need to cram at the last minute. Today's game seemed to be quite difficult. What should he do to defeat this young chess master of the misty illusory manner? Even if this guy's level was at a low level in this world, he should at least be at a professional level, right? Based on his own strength, the chances of success seemed rather slim. Jun Moxie suddenly thought of a phrase that the old man often said back then. In Go, there are moves within the game, and there are moves outside the game. He couldn't help but feel moved. Looking at Qi Wanjie, who was already sitting upright in front of the chessboard, Jun Moxie suddenly smiled strangely and said, "Brother Qi, are you ready? Chess is an elegant matter, and one must act with integrity. As the current Go King of Misty Mansion, if you were to lose to a nobody like me in the end, it would be a very embarrassing thing. This would be detrimental to your reputation, a lifetime of fame, No need for you to worry, Qi Wanjie looked at him darkly and said, I believe that my reputation is not something that can be shaken by any little cat or dog. Is that so? Brother Qi, you are really confident. That day when I was playing against the chess saint of Xian continent, Hua Wu Qiuo, the chess saint of Hua Wu Qiuo once said something that is still fresh in my memory. What? You played against Hua Wu Qiuo before? What did he say? Qi Wanjie's expression turned solemn, and a hint of nervousness finally appeared on his expressionless face. Hua Wu Qiuo, the chess saint of Xian continent, had made a name for himself when he was young, and had never tasted defeat for over 200 years. If the Nine Nether First Young Master was the legend of Xian skills in the Xian continent, then this person was the legend of Xian continent's chess skills. As a Go expert, no matter how arrogant Qi Wanjie was, he didn't dare to say anything in front of this chess saint. Now that he heard that this free and natural physique person had played against Hua Wu Qiuo before, his heart couldn't help but sink. Could it be that this Mo Junyi was really proficient in the way of Go? Then how was his chess skills? A person who had the qualifications to play against Hua Wu Qiuo definitely couldn't be underestimated. At this point, Qi Wanjie completely retracted his underestimation. His battle intent rose, and his gaze locked onto Jun Dushao. Chapter 950. If he didn't say this, although Qi Wanjie was wary, he would still have his suspicions in this regard. But Jun Moxie had said it so straightforwardly, and it had instead reduced the little suspicions in Qi Wanjie's heart by 90%, and his apprehension had increased by 90%. An ordinary chess player would never dare to casually mention a chess grandmaster, just like how a top Xian expert would never dare to blaspheme the Nine Nether First Young Master. But there was only one reason why Jun Moxie could speak of Hua Wu Qiuo in such a casual tone. That was, Jun Moxie didn't really care about Hua Wu Qiuo. At least, he didn't treat Hua Wu Qiuo as an insurmountable existence. If that was really the case, then what did it mean? Could it be that Mo Junyie's chess skills had reached such a terrifying level? I believe that Brother Mo is not such a senseless person. Qi Wanjie's tone instantly weakened by at least 30%. Brother Qi, you don't have to be so concerned. I'm ashamed to speak of it. Back then, I competed with Hua Wu Qiuo for 3 rounds. I was defeated by a single move. Hua Wu Qiuo's chess skills are indeed worthy of being number 1 in history. No one can compare to him. I'm obsessed with chess and rarely lose. I'm usually arrogant, but when I meet a true expert, I still can't escape defeat. Today, I'm fortunate to meet the chess king of Misty Mansion. I hope that Brother Qi can be like Brother Wu Qiuo and grant me a defeat. Jun Moxie said slowly, as if he was reminiscing about the past. Qi Wanjie was speechless, but the wariness in his eyes grew thicker and thicker. He had actually played 3 rounds with Hua Wu Qiuo before a victor was decided. That meant that out of the 3 rounds, he had at least won 1 round against Hua Wu Qiuo. Although I've never seen Hua Wu Qiuo, nor fought with him, I've studied all the records of his games. Although it's not all of them, it's at least 80 to 90% of them. Hua Wu Qiuo's abilities are unfathomable, and his style of playing chess is like that of a teacher, a proper steed, and would never take risks for luck. His foresight is deep, and there's no lack of meticulousness in his majesty. Otherwise, how could he have created the legend of never losing a single battle? Although I'm conceited, I admit that I'm far from this person. But Mo Junyi was actually able to play against Hua Wu Qiuo for 3 rounds, and only lost by a single move after a long battle. In other words, his chess skills were roughly equal to Hua Wu Qiuo's. Even if there was a difference, it shouldn't be too big. In that case, if I were to face such an expert today, wouldn't I definitely win? That day, at the end of the chess game, Brother Wu Qiuo said with great emotion. Jun Moxie smiled reservedly, changing the way he addressed the chess saint from Elder Huats to Brother Wu Qiuo. Thousands of years will always be empty, from ancient times till today. It is just a game of chess. On eyes, Jiet. Qi Wanjie murmured. Suddenly, he was sweating profusely, and his originally calm gaze became a little dazed. because just from this poem, he could see the magnanimity of this chess saint Hua Wu Kuro. The path of chess had an inseparable connection with one's magnanimity. If one's magnanimity was not broad enough and only focused on the gains and losses of a moment, then one would never achieve much in the path of chess. But if one only focused on the big picture and ignored the gains and losses of a moment, then one would never obtain victory. Only with the perfect combination of these two could one truly be a top-notch chess player. Qi Wanjie asked himself that he was still far from reaching such a level. Playing chess today was just a game of chess. How magnanimous was this? I admit that I am inferior to Elder Hua's magnanimity. Qi Wanjie sighed. He only felt that his confidence, which was like an iron wall, had already, intentionally or unintentionally, cracked open. Under the other party's narration that was like a trickling stream, it was slowly crumbling. At that time, after Elder Hua sighed, he suddenly laughed and said, "Little Mo, this old man suddenly thought of a couplet. Since I've seen you today, let me test you. How about that?" Jun Moxie saw that Qi Wanjie's state of mind had already loosened and was secretly delighted. But on the surface, he maintained his composure and chased after a desperate enemy. "May I ask what the couplet is?" Qi Wanjie couldn't help but ask. Jun Moxie wasn't the only one who was curious. Everyone present couldn't help but perk up their ears. Jun Moxie could be said to know how to tell a story. This story had never happened before, but under his interpretation, it had unexpectedly become vivid and lifelike. Everyone present couldn't help but want to listen to it. Everyone who heard it felt that this was something that had really happened before. Everyone's hearts were the same as Qi Wanjie. From complete disbelief at the start, to disbelief afterwards, to half belief, to half doubt, and finally to absolute certainty now, and at that time, I also asked Brother Wu Kuo what is the couplet? Jun Moxie revealed an expression of admiration and said, "Brother Hua said, heaven as the chessboard, the stars as the chess pieces, who can play? This is the couplet." After Jun Moxie finished speaking, he looked at the silence of the place. Everyone was frowning and thinking hard. Heaven as the chessboard, the stars as the chess pieces, who can play? How magnanimous is this couplet? Qi Wanjie let out a long sigh, concentrating in deep thought. He had always thought highly of himself, and his life's goal was to surpass Elder Hua Wu Kuro. Now that Hua Wu Kuro had come up with a couplet, he naturally had to work hard to come up with a couplet. If he couldn't come up with a couplet, wouldn't that mean that he had no hope of catching up to Hua Wu Kuro in this lifetime? Right now, although he was sitting in front of the chessboard, he no longer had any thoughts of victory or defeat in his heart. It could even be said that in his heart, he had completely forgotten about this match. All he was thinking about was this couplet. Qi Wanjie was different from Lin Qingyin. As the chess king of the Misty Mansion, he had his own status. Even the powerful Zhan family could not threaten him with force. But he also had his weaknesses. Zhan Yushu had given him many things and promised him even more. As long as he helped the Zhan family win against the free and natural physique possessor, Mo Junyi, he would be able to obtain countless benefits. Those were things that he had always dreamed of. Power, status, beauties, money. As long as he won today, Zhan Yushu would definitely give them to him. These were things that ordinary people could not obtain in their entire lives. Qi Wanjie naturally wanted them. But speaking of what he wanted the most, it was still the highest glory of the way of chess, challenging Hua Wu Kuro and defeating Hua Wu Kuro. This was the goal and highest dream that he had pursued since he was young. There was no room for comparison between the two at all. There was no lack of talents present. Among them, there were many youths who were proud of their literary talents. Even the judges were frowning and mumbling to themselves. This was a couplet from the chess saint of this generation. And the foundation of this couplet could be said to be able to swallow the rivers and mountains, majestic and majestic. Just by hearing it, one could feel the heroic spirit in one's chest reaching the clouds, and be filled with emotions. Heaven as the chessboard, stars as the chess pieces. Who could play such a couplet, such absolute, who could come up with it casually? Qi Wanjie's mind wandered, his mind focused. Unknowingly, a thin layer of sweat had formed on his forehead, and his face had also turned a little pale. Among these people, he was undoubtedly the most concerned, because this couplet came from Hua Wu Kuo. At this moment, he heard Mo Junyi sigh in shame. "I'm ashamed that Brother Hua came up with this couplet for me. Until today, I still haven't thought of the second couplet." Sigh. This sigh seemed to be filled with disappointment. Qi Wanjie's spirit jolted, and he couldn't help but reveal a slight smile. He thought to himself, if you can come up with it, then how can it show me? Only you can't come up with it, but I came up with it. This proves that I'm better than you. This proves that Hua Wu Kuo and I are on the same level, and even above you. Hua Wu Kuo, the world calls you the chess saint, but I refuse to accept it. No matter what, I have to come up with the absolute couplet you've given. Just like your title of chess saint, sooner or later, it will belong to me, Qi Wanjie. Qi Wanjie racked his brains to think of this couplet, racking his brains to come up with the second couplet. Just as he was thinking so hard that his brain was in knots, he suddenly heard a smack in front of him. Mo Junyie's voice said, "Brother Qi, how long do you want me to wait for? When will this game of chess start?" Qi Wanjie opened his eyes in a daze. Only now did he realize that he was sitting in front of the chessboard, and opposite him, that free and natural physique prodigy was sitting upright and still, staring at him with a sharp gaze. In his hand, there was even a handful of chess pieces, obviously waiting for him to guess the first move. "What?" Qi Wanjie asked in a daze. Right now, he still hadn't completely woken up from the contemplation of that couplet. "Guess who goes first? Don't tell me you don't even know this?" A few black lines appeared on Jun Moxie's face, but he almost laughed out loud in his heart. Looks like this fellow's mind has already wandered off. Guess who goes first? Oh, right, guess who goes first? Qi Wanjie almost subconsciously picked up a chess piece from the box and placed it on the chessboard. Jun Moxie slowly let go of his hand, and the chess pieces in his hand fell onto the chessboard. He mumbled, 1 pair, 2 pairs, 3 pairs. Exactly 6 pieces. Looks like I've made the first move. Brother Qi, thanks for letting me win. Oh? Qi Wanjie was still thinking, heaven as chessboard, stars as chess pieces, who can play? Who can play? Such absolutes, how can one come up with the second couplet? And what object can be compared to the heavens and stars? Stars as the chessboard, with heaven as the game, how to deal with it? A crisp smack sounded by his ear. Looking over, there was already an additional black chess piece on the chessboard, landing right on the star position in the upper right corner. The opponent had already made his move. A sliver of clarity instantly appeared in Qi Wanjie's mind, and he responded with a chess piece on the lower left corner almost without thinking. With a smack, another black chess piece landed on the star position in the upper left corner. What kind of opening is this? Qi Wanjie had made a name for himself in chess for half his life, but he had never seen such a strange opening before. This position was said to be guarding the corner, but it was a little far, said to be surrounding the center, but it wasn't said to be occupying the edge. That didn't make sense. In the way of chess, there had always been the saying of golden horn, silver edge, grass belly, and the opponent's chess moves right now had completely overturned Qi Wanjie's previous understanding. What he didn't know was that it was one thing for him not to have seen it before, but the star position of chess pieces was the best method that Earth had only researched in the recent hundreds of years to guard the corner, watch the edge, and look at the center. Chapter 951. Qi Wanjie watched for a long time, but still did not understand what was going on. After all, the position of this piece was far too different from what he originally knew. But he was ultimately a chess master, and naturally had his own thoughts. Although he still did not understand his opponent's true intentions, he could still sense that the two pieces above his opponent were looking at each other from afar, and there was a faint possibility of them forming a momentum. When experts exchanged blows, the slightest difference could lead to a huge error. Qi Wanjie did not dare to be negligent and immediately probingly placed a piece in between his opponent's two pieces, intending to threaten both parties, or at least cut off their connection. Let's see how Jun Moxie would respond next. Unexpectedly, the opponent completely ignored it and actually placed another piece on the star position at the lower right. Qi Wanjie was even more hesitant. The opponent's opening was strange, but seemed to contain some sort of logic. As expected of a chess expert who could exchange blows with the chess saint Hua Wukiro, he became even more wary. He welcomed the battle with increasing caution. Just like that, both parties exchanged blows, and in the blink of an eye, tens of pieces had already been placed. The black and white on the chessboard were arranged in picturesque disorder. Both sides were roughly evenly matched. Jun Moxie's thoughts moved extremely quickly, and his chess pieces were even faster. Every piece he placed actually had the power of wind and rain, lightning and thunder, causing Qi Wanjie to have a strange feeling of being unable to take in everything. It was as if the opponent's speed was getting faster and faster, faster and faster, as if all of his moves were within the opponent's calculations, which was why he could be so unhesitant under the lead of Jun Dashao's powerful speed. Qi Wanjie, who was unwilling to fall behind, also increased his speed a little. Jun Moxie sighed in his heart. Although the opponent was distracted, his basic skills were not for naught. Just relying on his instinctive reactions, and one that was completely unfamiliar with his modern style of chess, he was actually able to make both sides be evenly matched, and even faintly contained an extremely thick and tenacious power to retaliate. However, the true contest had yet to come. He had basically displayed the moves within the game to their limits, and it was hard for him to make any more progress. Right now, what could truly have a decisive effect were the moves outside the game. And up until now, the effects of the moves outside the game had been very ideal. Qi Wanjie's chess skills were brilliant, but his weakness was within his grasp. Along with the continuous clashing sounds, the spectators became more and more nervous. On the surface, the game between the two of them was very different from what everyone had expected. Initially, everyone had guessed that Mo Junyi would definitely lose this game. But the current situation was that great prodigy with the free and natural physique was the same as the previous round, once again occupying the absolute initiative. Every move he made was like a thunderbolt, and there were countless wondrous moves that were beyond the scope of the chess styles that existed in the world, yet they were all extremely exquisite and wondrous. On the other hand, the young chess king of the Misty Mansion seemed to be constantly in a state of trepidation, as if he was treading on thin ice, constantly dealing with things passively. Although the situation seemed to be on par for now, no one was optimistic about Qi Wanjie's chances. This extremely unexpected situation really made everyone's jaws drop. Could there really be such a genius in this world who was proficient in everything? Could it be that the free and natural physique was really that perverse? Qi Wanjie, who was in a disadvantageous position, finally started to pay attention to the chess game in front of him. He had always been dealing with things behind, and had never taken the initiative to attack. This really made him feel very aggrieved. And it was precisely this aggrieved feeling that caused him to suddenly come to a realization. Seeing that the opponent's momentum was about to be established, Qi Wanjie paused for a moment and decisively gave up on the entanglement at the bottom left corner. Suddenly, he made a move and landed in the air at the opponent's right corner. This move seemed to have come from the heavens. At first glance, it seemed like an unreasonable move. But thinking about it carefully, it was actually attacking the opponent's vital point. Although he had completely given up on the bottom left corner, the opponent still needed 3 moves to surround and kill, and only then would he be able to gain complete control of the situation. But if he left 2 pieces in the air, the originally good situation would be completely destroyed by him. No matter how he chose, it would be difficult to choose. The moment this piece landed, the situation instantly changed. Those who were knowledgeable all let out heartfelt sighs of praise. Jun Moxie laughed coldly in his heart. "You've finally come to your senses? But it's a little too late to come to your senses now." The black piece continued to land like it was flying. It didn't care about the bottom left corner of the killing move in 3 steps, nor did it deal with the abrupt word that landed in the air. Instead, it cut into the opponent's white dragon's breaking point, and actually became a strong attack with the intention of slaying the dragon. If Qi Wanjie continued to attack the opponent's right side, then the dragon that he was relying on as the foundation would be in danger of being completely annihilated. But if he gave up just like that and turned back to save the foundation dragon, then the opponent's piece would be able to entangle his dragon for at least 5 or 6 moves. And as long as he relaxed, then the consequences would be unthinkable. After all, the opponent had made the first move and held the crucial advantage. Qi Wanjie's body trembled. He picked up a piece but couldn't place it down for a long time. Right now, the chess game had already reached the middle stage. Every piece was of great importance. As long as there was the slightest miscalculation in any move, then it would be a situation of no return. The current Qi Wanjie could be said to be in great pain. He completely didn't expect that he would meet such a persistent opponent in today's battle. It was clear, this young master would rather sacrifice himself to bite off a piece of your flesh. You hit my eyes, I'll strangle your throat to death. You attack my legs, I'll attack your heart. In any case, I'll do whatever I want with my life, completely disregarding whether it was reasonable or unreasonable. Valiant. All of Qi Wanjie's moves were futile, because the opponent had taken the absolute initiative from the start. No matter how he, who was in a passive position, tried to probe the opponent would just ignore him. If you attack ruthlessly, then I'll also use my killing move. It was like a scholar meeting a soldier, unable to be reasoned with. A resolute look appeared in Qi Wanjie's eyes, and his eyes gradually became bloodshot. The only thing he could do now was to throw out his winning move and throw the entire situation into chaos. Then he could rely on his powerful and meticulous calculation ability to turn the situation around. If he didn't take this risk, he wouldn't be able to obtain victory. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated. His hand raised and landed. With a pa sound, everyone fell into a daze. This move of Qi Wanjie's had actually struck the breaking point of Jun Moxi's dragon. Right now, both sides were like two gamblers who had lost until their eyes were red. After not having a single penny left, they began to kill each other with their swords and sabers. I won't defend if you slash me, but I'll also stab you with my sword. Let's see who can last till the end. Jun Moxi frowned. He raised his head and let out a long breath. All along, his eyes had been fixed on the chessboard, not paying attention to anything else. Now that he suddenly raised his head, Qi Wanjie couldn't help but look up as well. But he saw that Jun Moxi's face was filled with a look of reminiscence. His heart couldn't help but shake. At this time, he was actually not paying attention to the chessboard? Then what exactly was he thinking? Right now, what could be more important than the outcome of this game? Just as he was guessing and hesitating, he heard Jun Moxi let out a long sigh and said, "The truth is really mysterious. The two games are actually so similar." That day, I also played like this. Brother Wu Qiu's chess moves were like a dignified and upright teacher, playing steadily and surely, without the slightest bit of urgency. He definitely wouldn't take risks and seek luck. In the end, all of my attacks were turned into nothingness. Today, it's a different opponent, but it's filled with killing intent. This state of mind is different. At least I didn't go to the situation that I hate the most. Good, let's see who will emerge victorious. Qi Wanjie's heart trembled as he thought. Looks like I'm indeed inferior to Hua Wu Qiu. He can face the situation calmly, but I have to fight to the death like this. Just this state of mind alone is already inferior. Just as he was thinking, he heard Mo Junyi let out a long sigh and said in a low voice, "Heaven as the chessboard, stars as the chess pieces, who can play?" Heaven as the chessboard, stars as the chess pieces, stars as the chessboard, how can it be played? Good couplet, really good couplet, who can match it? This achievement is not inferior to chess Saint Hua Wu Qiu, but such absolute. Who can match it? Qi Wanjie only felt a heavy jolt in his heart, as if someone had taken a huge hammer and hammered heavily on his heart. In an instant, his consciousness that had just regained clarity actually returned to chaos again. I haven't matched that couplet yet. Right now, my chess skills are still far from Hua Wu Qiu's. This Mo Junyi is clearly saying that I'm not as good as Hua Wu Qiu, and the contempt in his tone is clear as day. He's clearly saying that I'm not as good as him, but his chess skills are clearly not very high either. Since his chess skills are not high, why is it that I've always been at a disadvantage in the process of exchanging blows with him for so long? Could it be that I've already fallen into his trap from the start of the game, and he only wanted to see how I would play at this stage, and that's why he dragged the battle to this point? Could it be that this person is really so brilliant? Could it be that I'm really not as good as him? The moment this sudden thought arose, it could no longer be suppressed. Qi Wanjie looked at the chessboard powerlessly, feeling that the chances of victory in his heart were completely gone. The pride that he had for a long time was instantly smashed to nothing. Just at this moment, a paw sound rang out. Jun Moxie's chess piece landed, and it was still an attack. It was still attacking Qi Wanjie's big dragon, Little Sharp. Qi Wanjie heard this crisp sound, but his mind was in a trance. It sounded as if it was thousands of miles away, and it was thousands of years ago. There was a feeling that time and space were completely misplaced, and it was an extremely unreal feeling. What are you thinking about? Can you be faster? Win or lose, you better hurry up and act. What's the point of always dragging the time like this? It's just a game of chess, not a woman giving birth. It's really unbearable for me. Dragging your feet like a woman, just how did you get the title of Chess King? Jun Moxie's merciless berating came from the other side. Qi Wanjie's heart instantly jolted, as if he was suddenly awakened from a dream. He raised his head and looked at Jun Moxie in a daze. His eyes were already filled with bewilderment as well as fear. Looking at the situation on the chessboard again, he only felt that he was already in a precarious situation. As long as the other party took a breath, he would have no way of survival at all. Thinking of this, he actually felt that the other party was magnanimous and didn't kill him off, giving him a chance to preserve his face. All of this was completely him being tactless and dragging the time. Chapter 952. That the current Qi Wanjie, not to mention continuing to play chess with Jun Moxie, even if it was any other chess player in the Misty Mansion, Qi Wanjie would definitely lose. He lowered his head again, looking at the black and white chess pieces on the chessboard. In that instant, all his hopes turned to dust. Casually pushing the chessboard away, he lowered his head deeply and said in a choked voice, "I admit defeat." As soon as these words came out, everyone present was indescribably shocked. From the start of the game, they had seen Jun Moxie suppressing Qi Wanjie. From start to end, Qi Wanjie could only defend and didn't have the slightest ability to retaliate. Until now, the game had entered the midway stage, and both sides had already tossed out the winning move. Once this move was out, it was either the fish dies or the net is broken. Life and death, victory and defeat, was about to be decided. But Qi Wanjie admitted defeat at this moment. Looking at the situation on the chessboard carefully, it was true that the black pieces had a relatively large advantage and were attacking from all sides. But the white pieces had been defending all along, and their foundations were extremely strong. Even if the chances of victory were slim, if they continued to defend, there was still room for an attack, and there was still a possibility of a comeback. Who would have thought that Qi Wanjie had already calculated all the steps to the end of the game at this moment? So he had to push the chessboard and admit defeat in advance? Qi Wanjie raised his head blankly, his eyes empty. Suddenly, he said in a low voice, "I'm really not his match. Actually, this game shouldn't have started in the first place. Because before it even started, I had already lost. Playing chess with the heart of utilitarianism is a great taboo for a chess player. If one's state of mind is not stable, how can the game of chess be stable? Brother Mo is indeed brilliant. I concede defeat. I admit defeat wholeheartedly." Jun Moxie heaved a sigh of relief lightly. It wasn't easy to win this game, and the mental exhaustion was even greater than a great battle. However, everything could still be said to be within his expectations. Ever since Jun Moxie started to tell that story, Qi Wanjie didn't interrupt him. It could be said that from that moment on, his ending was already decided. But he still relied on his strong basic skills and tenacious strategic awareness to struggle to the middle game. June Moxie had purposely said the first half of the couplet, but admitted that he couldn't match the second half. This was to plant a heart demon in Chi Wanjie's heart. Ever since Chi Wanjie came out, June Moxie had recognized this person's nature and formulated a plan on how to deal with him. This person was really famous. Moreover, it was hypocritical. Such a character was extremely sensitive to gains and losses. Speaking of which, Chi Wanjie was also very talented, and his chess skills had almost reached the pinnacle. Having achieved success at a young age, it was inevitable that he would be a little arrogant. This was the common failing of young people, and there was nothing to be said about it. However, it had also caused him to think highly of himself and have a personality of looking down on others. In this world, if there was one person who could make Chi Wanjie feel respect, it would only be Hua Wu Qiu, the chess saint. As for the others, even if the 9 Nether first young master returned to this world, he might not be able to move them, because Chi Wanjie didn't cultivate Xian Qi at all. So, although June Moxie only knew the name of the chess saint, this didn't stop him from fabricating an extremely exciting story, using the reputation of Hua Wu Qiu's chess skills to suppress this young chess champion from the Misty Mansion. And this was only the first step of the entire plan. Once he successfully suppressed Chi Wanjie's arrogance and made him realize how big the gap between him and the chess saint was, and then took the chance to say that he had played against the chess saint before, and that their skills were on the same level. Naturally, it would deal another blow to his confidence. Then he would throw out that couplet at the right time, and when Chi Wanjie was wholeheartedly thinking about how to match the second half of the couplet, he would suddenly start. At that time, Chi Wanjie was already sitting on the opposite side of the chessboard. To outsiders, it wasn't considered sudden. But to Chi Wanjie himself, it was extremely unexpected. It was like he was in the middle of a mental journey and was suddenly called out by someone. Then he had to throw himself into an intense game of chess and had to deal with countless strange moves that he had never seen before. Such a state of mind, such a state, how could he not lose? Moreover, at the most intense moment of the chess game, Chi Wanjie's nerves were already like a taut bowstring, ready to be fired at any moment. And when June Moxie suddenly brought up the couplet again, although he was sighing to himself, Chi Wanjie was incomparably concerned about this. So, that casual sigh became the last straw that crushed Chi Wanjie, causing him to completely collapse. From the moment they met, June Moxie had started to trap Chi Wanjie step by step, until Chi Wanjie fell into a state of no return. Speaking of which, June Moxie's chess skills were naturally not as brilliant as Chi Wanjie had predicted. But June Dashao's own chess skills and knowledge of the game of chess had played a crucial role. Because in the process of the official game, if not for Dashao displaying a move that surpassed 5,000 years of history, it would also be hard for Chi Wanjie to believe that his own strength could really compete with the chess saint for a day. Complemented by layers upon layers of planning, it was something that no one could guard against. Even if Chi Wanjie was lucky enough to withstand this mental demon, June Moxie still had a final trump card. June Dashao's unique secret technique, mental control, could make an ordinary person like Chi Wanjie, who had never cultivated mental energy, do whatever he wanted him to do, without the slightest bit of disobedience. Although this method was more obvious and could be easily discovered by Xian cultivation experts, but winning was still not a problem. Round 2, Mo Junyi won. As Miao Xiao Miao announced this result as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders, everyone fell into a moment of silence. The first and second round were the two games that the Zhan family had the highest chance of winning, but under the opponent's strength, they were both defeated. What should they compete on next? Some people who wanted to compete on their literary skills, after hearing the untitled poem that June Moxie unintentionally recited, "It's hard to meet, it's hard to part," directly gave up. Who would have the confidence to compose such a soul-wrenching poem? If they came out to compete, June Moxie only needed to say, "You just have to compose a poem similar to the one I casually recited, and it'll be considered your win." Then they would really be in a difficult position. Not only would they be seeking their own humiliation, they would also be too ashamed to show their faces. Miao Xiao Miao looked at June Moxie with a smile. Right now, she was no longer as worried as before. In her heart, she felt that this free and natural physique was really too much to her liking. Thinking of the line "man grows long, water flows east," and then thinking of the line "it's hard to meet, it's hard to part." Then she seemed to hear that touching and helpless song of the burial of flowers once again. Meow Xiao Meow's heart was in turmoil, and she actually couldn't control herself. At this moment, no one noticed that the young chess champion had already left his seat dejectedly. It was as if that young chess champion who had once shocked the Misty Mansion with his chess skills was no longer worth mentioning. Zhang Qingfeng and Zhang Yushu looked at each other, feeling a little anxious in their hearts. The third round had yet to start, but it had already fallen into an awkward silence. Putting themselves in his shoes, the two brothers felt that if the two of them were to compete with him, they would also feel apprehensive. This fellow was simply too perverse. It was as if there was nothing in this world that he didn't know or understand. Just what kind of person was this? You have the rare, free, and natural physique, but you don't know how to cherish it? You don't cultivate your Xian skills properly, but you put all your effort into these trivial matters. You're good at both the zither and chess, and because of half a poem, no one dared to compete anymore. Are you even human? Looking at the servants packing up the chess pieces on the chessboard, Zhang Yushu suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He let out a long sigh and said, "I've long heard of the reputation of the Xian continent's chess saint, Hua Wuqiu. It's said that this person has never made a mistake in his chess calculations in his entire life. And the way he does things in his entire life, he's always very orderly and disciplined. It's really rare to see someone like that under such a great reputation." Listening to Brother Mo's story today, I feel even more respect for this chess saint. Hua Wuqiu, as expected of Hua Wuqiu, as expected of the chess saint. This fellow was actually like a resentful wife, inexplicably unfolding for a while, as if he hadn't tasted meat for 10 years, shaking his head at the window, as if he was lamenting spring and autumn, throwing away his spring worries, talking to himself. Jun Moxie didn't respond because he knew that Zhang Yushu was acting this way because he was waiting for him to play along. But how would Jun Dashao give him this chance? "I'll just watch you sing a one-man show and see what you're trying to do." That's right, the chess saint's name shakes the world. He's truly an expert of his generation. No one replied. Zhang Yushu was naturally embarrassed. Zhang Qingfeng was helpless. He didn't know what his younger brother was trying to do, so he could only brace himself and stand out, singing a two-man show with his younger brother. That's right. The next round was supposed to be a literary competition with Brother Mo, and I've already thought of the topic. But I've changed my mind now. Zhang Yushu said to Zhang Qingfeng with a face full of smiles. No one paid any attention to him, so the two brothers could only continue their show. Right now, although the two of them were smiling brightly, they were extremely embarrassed in their hearts. They felt like the two of them were monkeys on a stage. "Oh? Yushu, you've changed your mind again?" After waiting for a while, there was still no one asking. Zhang Qingfeng could only continue to put on a show. In his heart, he was already cursing all his followers to the point that they couldn't turn over a new leaf. How could these servants not know how to read the situation? "I'll break all their legs and throw them out when I get back." That's right, after hearing about Chess King Wuqiu's story, if we still insist on competing in poetry, wouldn't that be too cliché? And thinking about the story that Brother Mo just told, I suddenly thought of a brilliant idea. Zhang Yushu was thick-skinned and said with a smile, "Oh, there's such a thing? Yushu, quickly tell us, what kind of brilliant idea is it?" Seeing that no one was supporting him, Zhang Qingfeng decided to get into the zone himself. "Fuck, if you want to be thick-skinned, then be thick-skinned. Who dares to say anything about me?" What the two brothers didn't know was that it wasn't that their followers didn't know how to read the situation, and it wasn't that they didn't want to speak. But because Jun Dashao wanted to see the two brothers' show, he used his mind control to control them. Right now, not to mention speaking, it was difficult for them to even breathe. But everyone was puzzled. Why don't I have the mood to speak? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.